If I could have your attention, please. I'd like to welcome you to our council meeting this Thursday, February the 27th. In the interest of time efficiency and ensuring that everyone who wishes to address the council is given the opportunity to do so, the following will apply to all comments made by the public. If you desire to be recognized by the chair, please fill out a request form and present it to the city clerk present in the council chambers. Each speaker shall be allotted 3 minutes to address the council unless such time is extended by the mayor or by questions from council. Groups shall designate a spokesperson to avoid repetition of comments. Every effort will be made to avoid interrupting speakers. Thank you for participating in your city government. We ask that you please silence all electronic devices. With that, I call this meeting to order. And we'll begin with our invocation. Could we please stand? Our invocation will be delivered by Pastor Alden Whiteman from Amazing Grace Baptist Church. Please remain standing after the invocation for our Pledge of Allegiance.
Our gracious Father, it's a joy to be able to still be in a nation where we can have these meetings, the public can put in their counsel and their thoughts, their requests, and have a council that listens to them. Lord, we're so grateful here in St. Cloud for so many things that's going on right now with the new influx of population, with the water and the sewer and all the things that are just piling up because of the new population. There's all sorts of issues that need to be taken care of. Give wisdom and guidance, I pray, to this council. Intercede for them and help them make the wise decisions. Help them remember that they are servants of this city. I thank you, our Father. We have opportunity to also ask your protection, your blessing to our law enforcement in this county, the state, particularly for St. Cloud. For Chief Gauntlet, his ministry, his chief and the decisions he makes. For law enforcement, for every time they put on a uniform, they become a target for mortal injury. For their wives and their children, watch over them and protect them. We pray for the United States of America, our Father. Grant wisdom and guidance in this election year. Pray for our military. You protect them and watch over them, and Lord, as much as possible, bring them all home. Ask your blessing upon this meeting tonight. In Jesus' precious name, amen.
Thank you, Pastor. Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Blackwell.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Matheny.
Here.
Councilmember Cooper.
Here.
Councilmember Askew.
Here.
Councilmember Trace.
Here.
We have a presentation of Employee by the Month by Heather Welch. And would you come forward? Come on.
Good evening. Precious Lee Maldonado helped an officer identify a suspect on a theft case that just occurred. She used different programs and found an identity for the alleged suspect from just a first name and photo. Precious Lee used the first name, race, age to check our CAD systems and matches. She narrowed her search and found the suspect. Precious Lee provided that information to the patrol officer who deemed it as an exact match. Precious Lee displayed an excellent spirit of commitment in her ability to go above and beyond her dedication. She proved to be vital towards the apprehension of the suspect. It is my pleasure to present Precious Lee with Employee of the Month recognition.
Would you like to say something?
I would just like to thank my supervisor. She's always been very patient with me and very kind, and the coworkers I work with, because it's like a family over there, and St. Cloud for giving me an opportunity to represent them.
I'm going to weigh in here and go a little bit broader to brag not only about Precious Lee, who does a phenomenal job, but our comm center in general. As I mentioned to council, many people in this room are probably not aware. Your 911 center is one of only 12 911 centers in the entire world that is accredited to the level that ours is. And we dispatch for both police, fire, and emergency medical. We maintain a 94% efficiency rating on a daily basis, and the work that is done in there is absolutely phenomenal. One example was the heroic efforts by the fire and police department here recently with the fires that rescued a number of people from a burning facility. Had it not been for the exact, precise work of our comm center putting that information out, saving precious moments, that played a heavy role in our ability to rescue those kids from that house. So my hat's off to our entire communications center, and congratulations, Precious Lee.
We have a second Employee of the Month presentation, which will be made by Joe Etter.
When you get to my age, you need these. As the mayor said, my name's Joe Etter. I'm the interim director of HR and risk management. Tonight, it's my honor and pleasure to introduce Lillian Rosario as the Employee of the Month. I've had the pleasure of working with Lillian as both her coworker and manager, where she uses her excellent people skills and knowledge to deliver spectacular results in her role as human resource technician. Lillian's exceptional skills, professional experience, and personal qualities make her a powerful asset within the HR department and within the city of St. Cloud. During the time she's worked with us, she's had diverse responsibilities. She reviews resumes, identifies qualified employees, conducts preliminary applicant interviews, coordinates background checks, and works with various departments, only to name a few of her responsibilities. What's more, Lillian's personality, demeanor, job knowledge, and dedication to her profession make her a joy to work with and a standout member of our team. She constantly showcases her superb talents to achieve positive and favorable results. Lillian is bright, articulate, and hardworking. Her enthusiasm for her job comes through all she does. She has a positive attitude that makes her a pleasure to work with and is one of the reasons she is so well liked by her coworkers and other city employees. Lillian produces her work with great initiative and a positive attitude. She's admired for being focused, diligent, and approachable. Yeah, I'm talking about you. I have only heard nothing but good things about her from her coworkers and various residents of the city. She's a joy to work with because of her amazingly positive attitude and eagerness to stick tightly to deadlines. Her can-do attitude and team-building skills are also necessary and valued, not just by myself, but by her peers, who often rely on her to get the job done. I'm extremely grateful to have Lillian as a member of our team. For all of the above reasons, that's why Lillian has been chosen as the Employee of the Month, and I could not be more proud of her. Lillian, come on up. Okay. How about that? A nice little flag, but you don't know that, right?
Yes. I just want to say, this wouldn't happen if I didn't have the team that I have, that I work with every day, and I appreciate them always. And it makes this job easy when you do have people that have your back and are easy to work with. So I appreciate the recognition. Thank you.
Did I break the camera on that?
Thank you.
Yeah, you got it. Good deal.
This time, we're going to turn the podium around. At this time, we'd like to welcome Belinda Johnson Cornett for a presentation. She works and is the director with the Osceola Community Health Services, and it's a joy to have you here this afternoon.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. So I wanted to give you this evening a brief update on the health status of Osceola County, and then what we do in our organization and why it matters to the health of the community. So, so who we are. So we are a nonprofit entity. We've been serving in Osceola County since 2004, and we have a system of healthcare centers throughout the county. And we are a safety net provider in that our goal is to improve the health outcomes of the community and focus on quality care and the psychosocial issues that impact the healthcare of our community. So so how we support our mission, we accept all major insurances, including Medicaid, Medicare, but we also have a uninsured population. And as this county has grown, so has the number of uninsured. And so our challenge is keeping up with the needs of those who are uninsured to make sure that they have the same access to health care as those who are insured. So through that, we provide a sliding fee scale so that their care is based on their ability to pay and their income. And we receive some federal funding to help subsidize that care. So about 20% of our budget is from that federal funding, and the majority of the rest of the budget comes from patient revenue that we generate from those who are insured, as well as other grant fundings that we obtain. So in 2019, we saw over 22,000 patients with over 50,000 visits. And our request for services has been increasing as people begin to know the services that we provide. And so our challenge is keeping up with that growing need. So why do these services matter? So every 3 years, we do a community needs assessment, and the last assessment in 2019 was done as a collaboration between Advent Health, Orlando Health, the health department, and our organization. And what it shows is that even in preventive care, we kind of lag behind some of our surrounding counties. And this preventive care is important because it gives us an idea of what the health of our community is, but also helps us to deal with preventive measures. There are things that we can prevent. There are things that we can diagnose early or treat early so that these issues don't become chronic diseases within our community. And so simple things as a blood pressure screening, which could help identify early signs of hypertension, or a dental screening, which could help to diagnose many chronic diseases. So those are some of the things that we're lacking in our community based on this healthcare needs assessment. So what do we do and why does it matter? So we have the highest percentage of diabetes in our Tri-County region, that including Lake and Orange, and Seminole. And so what we do is that we provide, from the needs assessment, people have mentioned that they can't afford insulin, or they don't have the equipment that they need to test their blood sugars. So we have a diabetes case management program. We provide free diabetes testing. We have a 340B medication program, which is a discount medication program, so our patients are able to get medications at a discounted price. And so that helps them to be able to afford the medication that they need. And we also have trained diabetes care managers so that we can follow patients, and not just with their diabetes, but other things that may be impacting their health care. And one of the other issues that was identified in the needs assessment was affordability. So their patients, people in the community could not afford care or did not know how to access the care. There was lack of coordination of care or their ability to get care based on their pre-existing diagnoses. And so what we do, again, is the sliding fee scale. We provide the sliding fee scale so that we can provide care to those regardless of their ability to pay. And the sliding fee scale could be just a nominal $20, or it could be a percentage of the visit based on their income. So in 2019, we had patients that we subsidized their care. These are patients who have little to no income. And we subsidized in 2018 over $1 million in care for that population. And in 2019, because our numbers have gone up so much of the uninsured, we subsidized over $3 million in care for those patients. And then we have a category of patients who do have some income, and so they pay a percentage of the cost of that care. And we, in 2018, subsidized over $200,000 of care for that category, and in 2019, over $1.8 million. Other things that were identified through the community needs assessment was that was hard to navigate the system. They had long waits for appointments. There was lack of coordinated care. A lot of our patients receive episodic care. So they may go to urgent care, they may go to the emergency room, which is an expensive model for kind of non-critical care. And so what they have found, or what we found, is that they don't get the continuity of care that's needed. So you have a diabetic patient who may go to the emergency room and their blood sugar is high, but then they leave, they're diagnosed, and they are discharged, and then they don't have a system of care to go to help manage their diets, their exercise, and just the whole person. And what we've done to help address that issue is that we have centralized scheduling, which is we have same-day, next-day appointments to make it as flexible for people as possible, particularly those who work, to be able to get into care. We have an emergency room diversion program, and we work with the area hospitals to identify those patients who use the emergency room as their primary care. And so they refer patients to us for a medical home. And we also have a phone-to-home program. We currently work with the county EMS to identify those patients who frequently use the 911 system for their primary care to the emergency room. And we're currently talking with the City of Kissimmee and St. Cloud to roll this program out in those communities so that we can get people into the proper care that they need. We have 8 sites located throughout the county currently. We've just added on Council on Aging as a satellite site. We have case management, so we don't just deal with their medical issue, we deal with their psychosocial issues, whether it's mental health or substance abuse, where we work with our community partners to refer them, and also connect them to other services like housing or food that they may be lacking. And we also have behavioral health services that we've just begun this year. We have a licensed clinical social worker, a psychologist, a registered nurse case manager, and we also will be looking to begin telehealth, mental health this year. And then there was the issue of lack of transportation, which is a huge barrier in our community. Many of our patients rely on rides to get to their visits, so if their rides don't work out, they end up missing their care. And so we are going to be starting telemental health as well as telemedicine so that we can maybe get to where they are and provide the care they need. And we have 2 Lynx buses that Lynx has donated to us. So the plan is to try to get those into operations to help with the transportation issue. We have submitted a legislative budget request and hopefully to get some operating dollars to get those buses out on the road. And then we're going to be doing some dental mobile services. We have a new RV that we're going to be using to provide those services. We received that funding through a grant, and so we're hoping to be able to reach those that are hard to reach in areas who may not have access to health care. So we provide quality care, and we have been awarded national awards for the quality of care that we provide. And so we had 2 awards in 2019, and the first one was improving clinical measures. The second was a value enhancer, and we were the only community health center in Florida out of the 49 organizations such as ours to receive the value enhancer. So it was about cost efficiency, quality care, and access to care. And then we're Joint Commission accredited as well. So we have a lot of success stories. One was a patient who came to us. He was uninsured. He came to us with a sliding fee scale, received vision care, and it was noted that he needed ophthalmology. He needed cataract surgery. And he had a cataract in one eye already and had lost vision in that eye because he did not have access to health care before. So we were able, even though he needed cataract surgery, he still did not have money to do so. So our referral coordinator worked with him to help identify a place where he could get a free cataract surgery. And so worked with him through the process until he was able, and he was selected to receive that surgery. And he just responded back that he wanted to thank us because now at least he knows he'd be able to see for the rest of his life. And so we have patients like that we may not have the service, but we have the connections with our partners in our community to get them what they need. And just a reminder of where our sites are. We're located at Stadium Place. We have a site in Ponciana, and we provide maternity care, primary care, pediatrics, dental care. We have a site on Grape Ave here in St. Cloud, Intercession City, and BVL. We have a dental-only site in Kissimmee on Fortune Road. We have a new site at Cameron Preserves, which is located in the Affordable Housing Unit, and it's a partnership with the county. We have a site that we just opened at Council on Aging. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are quite amazed at all the things that the council does, and you just do an amazing job with your leadership. We thank you for all that you do and all that your team does. Does anyone in the council have anything they'd like to ask or share?
Ms. Cornett?
Yes.
Trace.
Thank you very much for the presentation.
Sure.
Is there anything we can do to help get the word out for some of the services that you guys provide? Is there anything?
There
we can
is,
put out
and
there?
if you're out and about, just mention to your constituents that we are here and that we have these services available. I think we've left brochures and flyers, and if when you come in contact with someone that because what we've been seeing is it may not be that person who needs the service, but they know of someone who needs the service. So the more we can get the word out, it would be great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
At this time, I'd like to invite Brian Willer up, who is the interim utilities director, to give us an update on our water.
Good evening. Right now, this week we're completing the 3rd week of ice pigging. We're seeing a lot of removal of the colored sediment debris from the system. I would encourage you, if any of you, I know some of you have expressed it, have time, want to come out and see the actual work. I think you'll be, one case appalled, and in the other case quite happy to see what is taking place as we go through the system, street by street. Tonight, you also have on the agenda Amendment Number 1 to the contract with Suez to add an additional 7 days to their contract. And at the same time tonight, an approval for up to additional $500,000 for what will be Amendment Number 2, which will extend the ice picking contract to the end of April. In that second amendment, Suez is going to make available to us a second trunk in the second week of March that's going to be completing work in another city. It will be made available for that week to come down and allow us to have 2 trucks available so that we can do the ice picking on the main transmission line from the water plant, which, because of the size of that line, it takes two trucks worth of ice to be able to do that ice picking. And we are in discussions with Suez North America corporate headquarters to get their commitment for a third amendment to the contract, which would allow them to finish the job. To provide that commitment, the company will be required to make significant adjustments or changes in other contract commitments, as well as some corporate commitments. We hope to get some word back from them. This is some, again, as I've said before, Suez is an international corporation. They're a big corporation. Have other commitments they made in North America and other places. And so, but they're trying internally, there's internal discussions and debate going on about trying to accommodate us. We've brought another consultant on board to provide a third-party evaluation and expertise in evaluating alternatives to the plant operation and testing and operational performance that we may need, again, having a third set of eyes to look at things from the outside. And we've also initiated follow-up surveys in the neighborhoods where we have done ice picking to get customer feedback. Those have just started. Obviously, we want to go back and see if, in fact, what the success is and how the customers are responding to it. So happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone on the council have any questions? Councilmember Cooper?
Thank you. Brian, when I talked to you 2 or 3 days ago, April, first week, second week, that's it. They're going to go to Canada, going to be gone for 2 years, can't come back. Now you're telling me they can't.
No,
This changed?
I didn't say they. I told you it was the first. They would be here till the end of April. Be gone the first week of May, and that's the discussion I just mentioned. That's going on with them now is to get internally is to get them to commit to the end of the job. There's people in the corporation who've said, we know what needs to be done. We'd like to see it done. We have to commit. We have to convince some other people in the company to make some changes and some contract commitments to get that done. So we got. It's not a yes and it's not a no. It's a we're working on it. We're going to get you an answer.
Okay, but I did ask you the question, how much of this ice picking could we get finished in the next 4 or 5 weeks? And you told me about 2/3? You'd be about a third not finished?
Yeah, that'd probably be a good approximation, probably.
Okay, if we couldn't get it finished, then we're going to end up they're going to go up to Canada for 2 years and they can't come back. My suggestion, and I had asked you 2.5, 3 weeks ago, what about putting some filters, home house filters on all of these people, these citizens that are having these discolored water, that we can get them the filters and the, replacements for the next year or two. That's a cheap fix that will get us under the radar, and we can go ahead and get the rest of it finished. If it even takes you 2 or 3 years from now to get finished. Looks like what you and I discussion a week or two ago was going to be at least where I'm relaying back to you right now, unless it's changed.
Well, if we can't get the other third ice pig, then I think we need to work on alternative. Some of it will be flushing because we've eliminated all the reservoirs of sediment that's in the system. Wait, let me finish.
Go ahead.
Let me finish.
Yes, sir.
So we've eliminated the reservoirs within the system that have the sediment. When we've been doing unidirectional flushing before, you were flushing many times, unfortunately, with other dirty water because everything within that area wasn't clean. If we get 2/3 of the system clean, you're going to have a clean reservoir of water within the system. So you're not going to have a total disadvantage. I'm not here to say it's going to 100% work, but you're not going to be working at the disadvantage we were working with before when you had a majority of the system dirty. Now you have a reservoir of clean system, so you'll be able to have clean water to flush out dirty water. That would be my first alternative, would be to see if we can go back. If we can't get the ice picking done, would be to go back and see if we can clean the system out now with unidirectional flushing, now that we have all the reservoirs of sediment out of the system and we've got clean water within majority of the system with which we can work. Then if it then doesn't happen, then maybe talk about another alternative. But I think what you want to need to do is try to get the full system cleaned out and not try to Band-Aid something for a couple of years, which would allow some of that sediment, if it's still there, to move around in the system and move into other parts of the system. I think you want to get it out of the system.
It appears to me, what you're talking about, to push it back and forth, you're doing a Band-Aid. You're cleaning one, without the ice picking, we run out, and they go to Canada. And you're gonna cross flush and back flush and all that.
Now, we're going to unidirectional flush. We're going to unidirectional flush.
Well, excuse me.
Okay.
You told me the last time that we were here, last meeting, you said that when you cross flushed and back flushed and all that, you're moving this selenium and everything back, you're moving it back and forth.
Well,
Correct? That was what you told me the last.
When we had the whole system was in a that whole system around the area we were flushing was in a contaminated state, the answer is yes. But if you cleaned out a biggish chunk of the system, what's feeding from the plant, what's feeding down the main lines now is clean water. Now you don't have that as much potential. I'm not again saying that it can't happen, but you don't have the high level of potential you had before for that to happen. And I would want to give that the first try before we went to something as extensive and as expensive as what you're talking about that may or may not actually work at the end of the day.
Well, I asked you to give me some questions, or some answers to how much cost it would be involved per one of those filters, or we buy hundreds or 1,000 of them, and you were going to give me some data and tell me how much it was going to cost. You got anything?
Yep. It would it probably cost about $60 for a whole house particulate filter. And my estimate is it would cost you about $200 to $300 per house to put it in, because you need to put it in on where the water line comes into the house.
Coming in on 3/4 inch
So you're
line,
in the
yes.
neighborhood of $250 to $350 per house on a plumbing basis, and so you can figure. And I don't know how many houses, because we don't know at the end of the day how many that would give. But I'm not here again to advocate or to guarantee that would indeed.
But at least you do know the square miles that we've got entailed. That
Oh, yeah,
we've
at the end of the day, we could do I'm just saying, I can't tell you today how many houses that would be. At the end of the day.
That's not rocket science to figure all that stuff out. I'm sure that's what you're all, every day it's inundated that you can do that kind of information. But it seems like to me, if that's the quickest, easiest way to get repairs fixed where they're getting the infiltration, dirty water, that I think we ought to go ahead and spend the money. If it's 100 of them that we need to replace, or if it's 500 of them. I don't think that's super expensive. We're throwing $5.8 million towards Castleback, or we're throwing this millions of dollars here, or $500,000 here, or $800 million down at the lakefront. That's pie in the sky. That's 8 years from now. But this is for the citizens, for their kids and their children, grandkids, years down the road that we never know what's going to happen. You want to drink this water every day? Do you drink this water?
I drink it when I'm here in City Hall.
No, you drink it in one of these bottles like I've got right here.
No, I do not.
Well,
I drink it out of a water fountain.
I haven't seen you, but if you do, that's fine. But most everybody else does it.
If I'm in the water business, I drink the water I produce.
Okay. It just appears to me that I think we ought to just go ahead, at least the ones that are affected, they're getting this dirty water. We need to go ahead, and even if you ice pigged it, and some of these are still coming up with this gray matter or dirty water, we need to go ahead and put some filters on it. And I'm going to make a motion that we do that.
So, that motion now?
I'm making a motion right now to see if we can get this second. If we can't, then the citizens will understand where we're coming from.
Mr. Manzares, could you help me?
I can, just because obviously under the city's procurement policies, I don't know what the end cost is going to be to the city council, so for the city. So you could move forward with giving the staff direction to figuring out the cost and moving forward with it on that. But depending on the cost, it may have to come back to the city council for final approval. because we do not have an understanding of what the actual cost was being.
All I'm asking, let's go ahead and get this thing started. Find out what you've got, Brian, in the square miles that we've got out there that's got the gray water and the dirty water, whatever you want to call it, non-drinkable water, and your clothes are dirty, your things that don't work, your washing machine's broken, I hear this. You've got 50 complaints already that are turned in to get reimbursement from the city. So if you can find out how many square miles we've got, how many we're going to get ice pigged in the next 4 or 5 months, or if it's going to be another 3 or 4 months longer, or a month longer, figure that out. Tell me how much we're going to get finished up that we can physically get completely done, or we're not going to get done, and then let's add the extra and let's get the filters and put it on there. That's only fair for the citizens. They're paying full price every day for the dollar. And they're having to run these taps and run it for 3 or 4 minutes before they get this gray water and where they can take a drink up there. That's not fair. I mean, that's added to their cost, and it's running it from a tier 1 to a tier 2, from a tier 2 to a tier 3. If you've got kids, 3 or 4 kids, they're running it because the bathwash not clean.
I'm well aware of the situation, Councilman
Well,
Cooper.
then we need to get some way, some shape or form to get it cleaned instantly, as quickly as we can, instead of waiting. We've waited 3 or 4 years now, and we've listened. The polisher's getting better. We replaced it. Oh, we had to wait on it. Now it's here. Now we've still got the problems. The Band-Aid of just waiting back until we get done with that 4 weeks from now, and it's not going to be finished,
But the
or when it is going to be.
The filters are a Band-Aid itself, too.
Pardon me?
The filters are a Band-Aid itself.
I don't
too.
think so.
Well,
That'll get it right instantly. Get clean water they can drink.
Mr. Sturgeon?
Yes, Mayor, I just want to make sure, is that direction from the council, or is that just Mr. Cooper's opinion?
Well, we have a motion that hasn't had a second to it yet.
That's my
Mr. Tracy, your light is on. Are you want to speak to this?
Yeah, so first I want to just say that we got to fix the root cause first. We fixed where it's coming into the system. Now we have to try to get as much of it out as we can, and then find out if there's problems after we do the ice picking in front of those lines. And then, yeah, I think we need to investigate how much it's going to cost to do this on a mass scale if that doesn't actually fix the problem. Figure out how much it would take to buy the filters in bulk and then install them. Is this something you put on right after the backflow preventer, or
yeah,
before, like above ground?
It'd be on your line going into your house. It'd
Three
have to be on your
quarters line
source,
that comes in.
on your source line, most likely, and probably inside the house.
Oh, inside the house, okay. Because, yeah, if people irrigate off that same line and it doesn't provide enough flow for what they have going, they're gonna have pressure problems. You know, we just have to
Right.
investigate a lot of that stuff before we just cause another problem by trying to come up with another solution. So first thing is fix the root cause of the issue, which is get all that junk out of the lines, and then figure out if there's a problem after that. That's my thought.
So are you making a second?
Well, and I guess as I indicated, it's going to have to come back to the city council most
Can we
likely
just
once
give
that
them clarification
information.
that you-
I think Mr. Cooper was basically saying he wants this, he'd like the council to agree with him that this needs to be reviewed, brought back, and get an idea of what it's going to cost as quickly as possible, after he does all the math that needs to be done to figure out the total cost.
Yeah,
Absolutely, as quickly as you can get it, humanly possibly get it done.
Yeah, I'll second the further investigation of this and putting costs and figures and time it'll take to implement.
And I think, go ahead.
Councilmember Matheny?
Thank you. I agree with the investigation, and I wish we had it a little earlier, because I know we've been struggling with this for a while. But the question I had was, I know you're saying that there's a third amendment that you'll hopefully be able to get to finish the job. Do you have any sort of timeline on that? You know, that you expect to have an answer on that in a week or 2 weeks?
Well, I don't operate within this corporate, but the person I've been talking to at the corporate said he would hope to get us an answer within several days.
Okay. So it's not like a protracted kind
Right.
of answer
Right,
that we're
right,
waiting on.
right.
So you think maybe like by the end of next week or something, you would?
Well.
I know you don't
yeah,
control it, but
right,
I mean,
right.
your feeling would be we
That,
should.
I think that was his indication to me. He understood our position, and he wanted to get us an answer so we knew where we stood in that situation.
Okay, thank you.
Is there something from council, can we have you guys draft a letter that we sign and send to them that's formal request that we want this, and we can get Rep. La Rosa or someone else to like actually, put some other effort behind it to say, please do whatever you have to do for your other contracts. Let's try to get this solved here first.
Yeah, I think any amount of, I wouldn't say pressure, but I think any amount of visibility would certainly help in the situation. I think, as I've explained to the company, right now, this is tremendous PR for them, and they're in a hero role. If they leave us now, it puts them in a villain role, and that's not a good marketing position to be in. And they understand that, and that's the guy I've talked to says that's part of his pitch to the people higher up. This is a good thing for us as a company to be the person who does this. But when you're dealing with a large international corporation, sometimes you don't always get the answer you want in that situation too. So I think anything, and we've already talked with the city manager about having Representative La Rosa. We've had some discussions with Congressman Soto's office about. I think any amount to put some, what you call it, pressure or some visibility on the situation certainly is not going to be lost in that situation. It certainly can't hurt in that situation as far as that goes.
Okay, so
Just go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Can we have staff draft a letter and allow the mayor to sign it, to put that out there, have that formal request to Suez to
Sure.
put that together?
Sure.
Yes, no
Okay.
problem. I would just like to say that last week, I and the city manager and a couple of staff, we met with Darren Soto in his office, shared with him, how can you please help us with this situation, the advantages that he sits on the EPA committee, and he promised that he would send the EPA down to check and double-check the water. He would also pursue financial assistance through the Clean Water Act and other resources that he might have access to. He also had been in contact, I found out this week, with Congressman La Rosa, and has been discussing what they can do together. He also promised that he and his staff would follow up with the Suez company to see what they could do if there was any pressure they could put on them to please go and help us to see this through to the very end until it's completely cleaned. I also met last week with Gray and Robinson, our lobbyists, up in Washington, and they also said that they would help work with them to make sure that this stayed a priority until it hopefully got cleaned up and accomplished. So the item before us is that we certainly want you to do some investigation on what it would cost for filters and is that a viable alternative, and to bring back a report and recommendation to the city council. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I think Mr. Sturgeon said, probably staff-wise, you could have it back on the agenda for the 12th for some action by the city council.
Thank you. Would that be acceptable, Mr. Cooper?
Let me ask another question. Brian, you and I talked before the meeting tonight, and you said you don't recommend putting these filters. You say it's not going to work.
Yeah, I'm not convinced it's going to work.
I've got
No.
this in North Carolina. I use it when I'm up there, and it works. It's whole house filter, and you can drink. It's drinkable. It's clean, and your cartridge, you can clean it once in a while, twice before every month. You can get 3 months out of it. So if you get 2 or 3 months out of one cartridge that's put in there, and you pay the $200, $300, $400, that's cheap to get clean drinking water.
But what's coming out
This ain't even rocket science.
what's coming out of your well is not the same thing that's out there in that water line.
You're talking pigs and dogs. I am talking about water coming into that house, that 3/4 inch line, and you put that filter there, coming in there, everything's going to be clean. You take a shower, you wash your clothes, you drinking water, it's clean. You can't tell me that it doesn't work. It does work. That's what it's made for. And you're telling me that you don't want to recommend it? You don't want to do the work, or is that you just don't want to do the figures?
Mr. Cooper, that's unfair.
I'm sorry, the question I've already asked you 2 or 3 times.
That's unfair.
Well, okay.
If I could answer.
I'll ask it to you then.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wheeler has had a discussion with me about this, and the type of filter we need may not filter out the orange discoloration. And he's actually an engineer with 40 years' experience in utilities, and he doesn't think it's going to work. Now, with that said, I heard your motion. I got clear direction from the council. We will come back with a plan and a contingency if that doesn't work. I think we owe you 2 plans.
Okay.
Does that sound fair?
That's fine, as long as you'll do something and let's move in the right direction.
Yes, sir.
Everybody wants to get it cleaned up. So that's what we want. So, if you
Loud
can
and
work
clear.
with me, I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Wheeler.
With that, that brings us to our citizens forum.
We have a motion and a second.
Well, no, we're
No,
just
a
taking.
motion, that was a recommendation.
I'm clear on the direction. We're
Oh,
good.
okay.
Yes, sir.
you
We're
know,
good.
There's nothing to take
Sorry.
action on. That's, we're
Okay,
good.
not a problem.
Any person who desires to comment on any item not in this agenda is provided this opportunity to address the city council. Each person is requested to complete a signing form to be provided to the presiding officer prior to or as soon as is practical thereafter the person addresses the council. When you come forward, please state your name and address for the record, and you'll be asked to please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Steve, I'm not sure I can read your last name. Oh, I'm sorry. Keffelberg. You'll state your name and address for the record,
Stephen
please.
Kleiner, 4780 Cypress Forest Lane, St. Cloud, Florida. Got a couple of questions. I'm trying to find out when the vote for the approval of the zoning change on the corner of Neptune and Old Canoe Creek is going to be coming up. Do we have a date for that, or when it's coming up on the agenda again?
Do you have any other questions?
I also want to know, has the study been taken as to how many cars actually go in and out of that new shopping center that's been just started on 192 by the Florida Turnpike? Because I understand that the concern of keeping it from being a shopping center is the fact that there'll be more cars than the 1,000 houses will produce. So I'd really like to see what amount of cars go in and out of that shopping center that is taking up quite a bit of property, and see if that's going to create more than the 2,000 plus cars that are going to go in and out of that property with 1,000 homes, and if that could possibly be done, so we know that the statements that have been made that it's going to be much more traffic if we have a shopping center than it is if we just have homes. So I'd like to see if the council can see about a motion to find out how much traffic that has created.
Thank you. Do you have any other concerns?
That's it.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I could give, I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
Sorry.
go ahead.
I mean, when the development happens, we have requested a traffic analysis as part of that development. So that will be done when they're going through the design process.
Could you also?
Steve, I was going to give you my card, Ms. Clymer, and give my assistant a call. I'll get that information for you.
I'm not asking how many cars they think is going to come from the housing. I want to know what we have, where we do have a shopping center, and figure out where we can actually do a count as to a weekly amount of cars going out. So then we will be able to say, yes, it's going to be less traffic if we allow it to be a shopping center, or no, it's going to be less traffic if we allow it to be homes. And that can be done very quickly. I also want to make a statement as far as the water goes. I have a filter on my refrigerator. That's the only filter I have right now, and that's because I use the water out of that to drink. I had bad water in the house for the 3 years. But I can get clean water out of the refrigerator with a GE filter.
I've got the same
So
thing.
it can be done with a filter. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, sir.
I have the same thing.
Michelle Peters. State your name and address for the record, Michelle.
Sure. I'm Michelle Peters at 4914 Zion Drive, St. Cloud. You know what keeps me up at night? I think about a little baby crying in a crib because it's hungry. And its parents are in the kitchen making that bottle, and they're mixing that water into that powdered formula. And that baby's only nutrition, morning, noon, and night, is that resin-infested formula. And I know you think it's a Band-Aid, Mr. Wheeler, but I'm sorry.
Mayor,
One
she
more
needs to
bottle to
address-
that baby.
Ma'am, you need to address the
I'm
council.
sorry, but I'm sorry, but one more bottle to that baby is too many. And I keep thinking, if that resin doesn't come out of our clothes and our appliances, what is it doing to that baby's liver and kidneys? Do you know? Do any of you know? Are you taking a chance with your child? Because some people can't afford the bottled water, and they can't get these systems. Have you looked into this since our meeting last year, Mayor? Or any of you since our meeting a couple weeks ago? Do you know the ingredients of the resin since our meeting? Do you know what they're putting into it and what's leaking into our water? Do you know what's in that baby's bottle? Do any of you? Do you care to find out?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
You actually do? Well,
I've done some checking. I've got history here.
you say it's safe, but in the plant where they're making it, they wear hazmat suits and goggles and gloves, radiation suits. What amount of it goes from that radiation suit to the part you drink? What portion in the water makes it safe? There's no standard. So you can't tell me it's safe because there's no standard. Do you know what the particle size, which we covered earlier, I won't look at them, we covered earlier, do you know the particle size of it? Because we don't know what filter will work. I would love to know, and I'd love you guys to find out, because that really matters, especially to that little baby and all of us, all of your constituents. We need to know what's safe to drink, and we need relief immediately. And last time I came here, I felt I was brushed off, and it could have been me. I probably didn't make my questions clear, so I left 4 questions. I've made copies of, if you guys don't mind. I don't know if I can hand this to you, but I would like these, if you guys can answer these 4 questions.
You'll just hand that to them.
I have enough for everybody. I've made copies. And it's kind of covering what we were talking about earlier. I'm done speaking. I just want to see if you can answer those.
Is this a test?
No, I
Okay.
just want to know if you guys have it, and if you can't, can you get it for us residents? Because I feel like I'm trying to be the voice here.
Right.
Mayor, obviously, these
Well,
are
we
questions that's going to require the staff.
Yeah, this
to
is
get
going
some
to require
answers.
some research, and we certainly appreciate your presenting these concerns, and we understand your concerns. Thank you.
All right, I'll make sure I post them on the website. Thank you.
Thank you. Monique Constantino.
Hi, my name is Monique Costantino. My address is 1870 Big Buck Drive, St. Cloud, 34772. And I did want to ask one quick thing about the MyX resin. I did want to ask, too, that of the city council, if our residents know their home's plumbing is contaminated with MyX resin, how will they ever be able to sell their homes without disclosing that? How will they ever be able to sell their homes? And my next question, I have something I'd like to enter for the record. Can I see it on the overhead projector or not? I don't know.
You can
Yes.
just,
Oh, okay. So I placed it where I wanted it.
yeah.
So, this is the Sunday, December 1st, 2019 Orlando Sentinel. The reason I'm bringing this.
Ma'am, can you come back up to the microphone, please?
Yes, I'm sorry. The
Thank you.
reason that I'm bringing this up is because citizens approached me about the integrity and about our town. We had a horrible murder, the Montalvo murder. We were torn apart as a town. Our hearts were broken. And we have a mayor who apparently had some sort of a relationship with someone implicated in the murder. And the Orlando Sentinel on December 1st, 2019, published an article where they contend that there is evidence that this Angel Rivera had quite an extensive relationship with the church, but it was not necessarily something that Mayor Nathan Blackwell has owned up to. And I would like to have some clarification on the behalf of the citizens of what exactly the relationship is between the church, the mayor, and Angel Rivera. I would like that clarified for the record on behalf of all the people that cared so much about Nicole Montalvo. Thank you.
Do you have anything else?
Nope. So I can leave that?
Wow. First of all, the Rivera family came to my church probably 15 plus years ago. And the man in question, Angel Rivera, and his wife were members of my church. They attended for 10, 12 years. They left for about 3, and then they came back about 3 years ago. They attended my church along with several thousand other people. You know, I call my church, as well as any other church, a hospital for broken people. He was a member of our church, but he was not a, quote, missionary of our church, as was reported in the paper. He was an independent missionary. He had his own 501(c)(3). He was not supportive of our church. But just like many missionaries that come to our church that do good things, he had a real heart for Ecuador, the work in Ecuador. We had built a church there, and he had developed a relationship on his own with the pastors there. Went back, took numerous trips, probably once or twice a year, taking clothes and medical supplies, and he had just a real heart for that work. But he did that independently. He had his own 501(c)(3). He had his own missionary organization. You know, when people are doing good things, we often pray for them, and we did that for him. One particular Sunday when we were having a mission emphasis, we brought him up, thanked him for what he was doing, and we prayed for him and prayed for his work because he was doing some good things. He's been a friend of mine, as have thousands of other people who have come into and through my church for years, as was Nicole Montalvo, who also came to my church on occasions and attended, along with their little grandson, who hugged my leg just about every Sunday after church that he was there. I loved him. Nicole did not, and her husband, Chris, did not attend regularly. But I love the Rivera family. I was as shocked as anyone over what happened. My entire church was. We have been heartbroken. We've prayed. We've had people in our church who have surrounded and reached out and loved the Montalvo families. There are also people in the Rivera family that are innocent victims also. When stuff like this comes up, you're just resurrecting that whole thing again, and it's so sad. I think a pastor is supposed to love anybody and everybody. That doesn't mean you condone what people do, nor their actions. I think Jesus loves us in spite of our actions, and he loves us because that's just his nature. And my heart is broken over what has happened, and I pray for the Rivera family that's still struggling with this, the innocent parties. And I also pray for the Montalvo families, and I urge you to do the same. Melissa Kennedy.
Hi, Melissa Kennedy. I'm at 1707 Pinion Circle, right here, 34769. And I wanted to find out if we could consider having a permanent traffic light or roundabout, which is safer, at the intersection of Sergeant Graham, and Neptune. I'm sure you guys get that request all the time. And my follow-up with that is, I just always wondered why that little stretch of road has two different names. It's just kind of weird. I don't know if anybody else wondered the same thing. You want to go ahead? I'm sorry. Okay. I don't have anything else. Thanks.
For the record, we talked with Mr. Hawkins, and he talked with the county manager, and they're going to leave that traffic light there until the repairs on the road are completed. We also talked to him about pursuing the possibility of putting a permanent light there, but we've asked the city manager to address that, and he is pursuing that. Do you have anything else to say, add to that?
No, that's correct, Mayor. Thank you.
Mayor, can we have the chief come up and speak in the name of that road?
It's a good opportunity to talk about a good man.
Sergeant Graham was one of the working sergeants for the St. Cloud Police Department who passed away a number of years back while a member of the organization. And as his dying wish, the county renamed that stretch of Commerce after his, and it has in his name. So it's a very emotional aspect from our police department because he was a very valued member. And I would too support a light going up at that intersection because it has a number of crashes and concerns for public safety there. And I know our Public Works Director is also looking at trying to convince the county to take a hard look at doing that on a permanent basis. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Mrs. Sturgeon, do you have anything else?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to address a question that the lady brought up earlier, and I think we neglected to say that. We've actually contracted with Reese Engineering and University of Central Florida Environmental Systems Engineering Institute to do independent testing on the MIAX resin and take discrete samples throughout the system. So we are working on that. So, sometimes people think government doesn't live. We listen at the public meeting. We've been addressing that, and we'll get those results to the public as soon as UCF's done with their analysis.
Excellent.
Thank you. Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you. Mr. Sturgeon, could you tell us about the roundabout? This lady had asked about a roundabout, but I don't think there's enough, I don't know, the verbiage, there's not enough
Right away.
platted right away. Thank you. Right away, I don't think. Is there enough right away that they could do a roundabout there, or is that even feasible?
I'm not familiar enough with the engineering of that.
Go ahead, you got it. I knew.
Well-
Councilmember Thiene.
Well, that is a valid question, is about the right-of-way width, but, I mean, the time to have this conversation with the county would be now, because they're getting ready to start the design, so this would be, I mean, the time to ask the question.
Thank you.
Could we
We can do
bring
it.
that forward and
I
ask
see
that?
3 heads shaking. We can definitely do
We get
that.
any other 3 more heads for, find out, at least ask the questions?
Yeah, you have a consensus on that.
We got a consensus. Can you do that, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am, we're going to get it.
You at Crumpler.
Good evening. My name is Hugh Crumpler, Michigan Avenue, St. Cloud, Florida. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I want to start by saying a positive thing. I want to thank the city manager, Nassim, all the people who work for the solid waste department for finally, quote, putting a lid on it. And I express that appreciation because it took a long time and it was extremely frustrating, but it sure feels good to have it here now. And as far as I can tell, they are doing a great job of doing their best to shut every lid when they to collect solid waste, whether it's garbage, recycling, or trash, yard trash. So I appreciate that, and it's nice to have some positive results. And I think those are people that we often forget about and don't get to tell them how much we appreciate what they do. I used to live in New York City when they had a garbage strike, and I can tell you, you need that. You need garbage collection, and you need people who take pride in their work, and we have that now. I appreciate it. Okay, next topic. Every time I get up here, I ask, encourage, beg people to act when you vote on the best interest of all the citizens of St. Cloud and not just any special interest or whatever. It feels like often we have to have a very emotional outpouring from the citizens in order to get things accomplished that I feel should be accomplished pretty regularly and automatically. But that's my opinion. But I will say this. It's so important that each of you build trust with the citizens. You do that by doing what you say you're going to do, starting with what you run on your flyers. And when you do things opposite of that, that's not building trust, it's the opposite. And I think what's important to me is to believe that when you say something, I can believe you. And I think, Mr. Blackwell, despite your answer, the newspaper made it sound like you tried to distance yourself from knowing this person, and yet there was a video showing otherwise. So the point about that being, for everybody, is to build trust with the citizens. Let us believe that we can believe you, all right? And only you control that, we don't. So my point is, we need to know that you're going to do what you say. We need to know that you will put public safety first. That means, okay, having clean drinking water. That means having non-toxic reclaimed water, because you got to remember, reclaimed water goes on grass that kids play in, dogs play in, cats play in. You walk in and you bring it into the house. Reclaimed water is very important. It may not be drinking water, but it needs to be non-toxic. And secondly, we need to have a focus and emphasis from you to build trust on public safety, and that means police and fire. We can talk about that another time. But the last point I'll make is we need to know that you're fiscally responsible, and when you hire people, consultants, companies, that you are using our dollars wisely and you are getting the best you can possibly get, people who are above reproach, people who have the highest ethics and the highest credentials in what they're being asked to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crumpler. Laura Tweed.
Laura Tweed, Health and Human Rights Advocate.
That was quick.
Sorry about that. They should resetting it.
You need to throw that thing away.
I'm going to start over. Laura Tweed, Health and Human Rights Advocate, 2808 Meade Avenue, St. Cloud 34771. At my home, I'd like to bring up the water. I live in Lakeshore at Narcoossee, and which is right next door to Hammock Point. I am receiving in my refrigerator 3 filters that are completely filled up with sand or some kind of deposit of some kind of something in it. I buy the filters on a regular basis through Amazon. They're GE qualified filters, and they're filling up probably every week, week and a half. I've also got a filter on my shower heads. I also have filters, Brita filter sitting next to my sink. I don't let my dog, or I don't cook for any water unless it goes through that Brita filter. Everything in my house, with the exception of my washer, is filtered. The reason I do that is because I am a psoriasis patient, and I also have autoimmune disease called psoriatic arthritis. I've also got thyroid issues. So when I'm speaking of this, is something I've had lifelong. Since I was 4 years old, moved to Orlando. When I lived in St. Cloud prior, before I left to move up to Maitland, I was having a lot of issues with my autoimmune disorders. When I moved to Maitland, it stopped. I come back to St. Cloud, and I'm getting it again. I can't get out of bed in the morning unless my left leg is swollen. That's a sign of my autoimmune disease acting up. When I left St. Cloud before, I moved to Maitland, and after Maitland, I moved up to Winter Springs. Winter Springs had a tendency on it as well, and they also have equally bad water. But when I came back to St. Cloud, it's just as bad as it was when I left here the last time. So I've got written, documented measurements from the University of Miami regarding my health care and my autoimmune disease. Use it as documents if you want. The other thing that I deal with in my house on the filter situation is my clothes. I use bleach, not off-brand. I use Clorox. And I also use Clorox too on my colors. I don't have a white shirt that's not pink. Every single shirt in my closet, including dress blouses like this that used to be white, are now beige or pink. I know how to wash laundry. Everyone calls me Laura Laundry Tweed for a reason. I know how to separate my laundry, I know how to wash my laundry, and I know what water temperature to use. I do not live in Canoe Creek Estates. I live on Narcoossee Road. I'm experiencing issues there, not only with my health, but also other things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Would anyone else like to speak to the Citizens Forum that hasn't spoken? If not, at this time, I'd like to move forward, if there's no objections from our council, council action item number 3 that deals with the leach-it. Are there any objections from me bringing that forward?
No.
Just for the record, could you please read that?
Discussion and possible action regarding agreement with Waste Connections of Osceola, Inc., formerly known as Omni Waste of Osceola, LLC, regarding discharge of leachate from the JED Solid Waste Management Facility.
Mr. Manzares, would you like to?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to introduce this item, and then we'll move into the discussion on it. So just to remind the council, going back as far as April 22nd, 2009, that's when the city entered into an agreement with Omni Waste at the time, now Waste Connections, with regard to the receipt of leachate material coming from the JED facility to be put into the city's wastewater treatment facility to be treated and through that system. In June of last year, June 13th of last year, the city council instructed the staff and acted to advise Omni Waste, Waste Connections, that the city would no longer receive its leachate from that company at the city's wastewater treatment facility. Again, that was done on that happened at the June 13th meeting. The city manager notified Waste Connections at the time that the city was exercising its right under the agreement to terminate the discharge of leachate due to the language in the agreement that said the leachate itself was an imminent threat to the system and to the public. The distribution or the receipt of leachate stopped as of June 17th, 2019, and has not been received since. As you might recall, at the August 22nd meeting, we had presented to the City Council and offered to resolve the matter with Waste Connections related to the contract termination. At that time, an offer was made that included the restarting of the receipt of leachate from Waste Connections, and the council said they weren't interested in that, and that offer was not accepted. Also at that meeting, the City Council directed the city manager to go out and hire independent environmental utility, legal counsel, and an expert consultant to review the situation and review the discharge of leachate into the system and how it relates to the terms of that agreement that was entered into back in 2009. That process occurred, as you know, and as we've advised you, or Mr. Sturgeon advised you, and now tonight we are bringing back that item for a discussion with the City Council to determine where the council wants to go with this matter and to decide how we want to move further with it. I will make 2 points. First of all, again, make it clear that the city has not received any leachate from the JED facility since June 17th. I'm sorry, since before June 17th, so that would have been June 14th of 2019 would have been the last time any leachate was received at the facility from the JED facility. Also, I will point, I know that there's been a lot of discussion about this. I'm compelled to advise you that the city is in a somewhat of a precarious situation. We clearly believe and have received information from Waste Connections that they believe the city has wrongfully breached the contract from 2009, and they will avail themselves of every legal remedy they have, which essentially means they will ultimately file a lawsuit against the city at some point. Given that situation, we are in a difficult situation because we have to move forward in these meetings with the idea that we have to protect the city's rights and the city's ability to defend that ultimate litigation the best way we can. Unfortunately, the state law does not allow us for us to have private discussions with you as a whole. We are not allowed to. We have a limited ability to insulate documents regarding this matter. So basically, we're having an open public discussion on this because we do not have the ability to have a closed session meeting on it. Ultimately, if the city does get sued, we will have that. The reason why I bring that up is because you will notice, unlike many of your agenda items, there's no packet information for this. And that's specifically done to avoid having information out there that might compromise the city's ultimate position in this if we are involved in litigation. So with that, as you know, through the city manager's office, Thomas Cloud of Gray Robinson was engaged to look into the situation, then ultimately to work with an expert on it. And Mr. Cloud is here. And with that, we'd ask Mr. Cloud to come up and provide to you his review and on the situation and where we think the best next option for the city council to take on this is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cloud.
Good evening, City Council. My name's Tom Cloud. I'm with Gray Robinson in Orlando. I'm a Florida native, grew up in Lakeland, just around the corner, and I'm pretty sure that, unlike many other places, my last name will not be misspelled here. Pretty sure about that one. I want to disclose to you that I worked on a case involving this very landfill. When it was first proposed, I was hired by a number of property owners in the area to oppose it. And I brought in several of my partners, including Dean Cannon, who you know is Speaker of the House, to fight this. This is before Dean had run for the legislature. And we did everything within our power to try and stop this landfill. I still believe in my heart that it was really not a good location for a Class 1 landfill, but, you know, that decision did not go our way, and we fought pretty strenuously to stop it. We did about everything you could possibly do, and for whatever reason, the county decided to approve it, and so we're left dealing with it. And your situation is that it's out there, it's not going to go anywhere, and at some point in time, they began receiving cold fly ash. Now, I've spent 40 years representing municipal utilities in Florida. I really prefer representing publicly owned utilities. I have not really done a lot of work for investor-owned utilities because I think there's an opportunity to do the right thing. One of the first cases I worked on was for Orange County, in which they ended up pulling all of their effluent out of Shingle Creek and taking it to citrus groves. That had never been done before. And that took about 5 years out of my life to go negotiate irrigation agreements with citrus growers. And you want to talk about people that were paranoid about reclaimed water. Back then, nobody took reclaimed water in Florida. That was a new thing. But it worked, and we had a lot of cooperation and a lot of understanding with people to make it work. And the situation you have here is this. When I was hired, I went out and in turn retained the best wastewater treatment engineer in the country. His name is Hal Schmidt Jr., Vanderbilt grad. He has been a wastewater process engineer for longer than I've been a lawyer. And I asked him to analyze the operation. Now, as your city attorney has indicated, there has not been leachate going to the plant now since June. So we're at about 7, 8 months since that. And so we did not have any readings, any flow coming through the plant that had it. But of course, we had the historical MORs, which is what they call the monthly operating reports, which have the pollutants, what they call constituents. It's a fancy name for the bad stuff or what's left in the wastewater once it goes through the plant. And we could not find for the period in question anything that would affect the operation of the wastewater plant, that would violate the Clean Water Act, that would violate the State Water Pollution Control Act that was adopted in the early 1970s on the cusp of federal legislation. It's just not there. So the contract provides actually that the city was to give the operator of the landfill an opportunity to fix it if there was a problem. That did not happen. There's a guy I like to read named Marcus Aurelius. He says, do two things. If it's not right, don't do it. And if it's not true, don't say it. Pretty simple rules, don't you think? And so the situation we're in is not good for us. And let me say, I don't believe, number one, there will ever be foreign coal fly ash that goes to that landfill again. I think the message got received over there pretty loud and clear. Secondly, I suspect that leachate will never again go to your plant. Here's why. Besides finding that the leachate is not causing a violation of state and federal pollution control law, even during the time when it was receiving leachate from a landfill that had fly ash in it, we did find that it has other problems with it. And the other problems with it deal with more traditional things that you would expect to find. One is that it put a significant biochemical oxygen demand on your wastewater plant, which was many multiples of times what the loading should have been. Secondly, it put in a tremendous amount of ammonia, which was also many multiples of times beyond what loadings would be in normal domestic sewage. So the problem was not so much with the fact of the leachate going into the wastewater plant, but the loadings that were in it. So if you had followed the contract, then there would have been opportunity to address that. And I believe that it is not too late for you to bring yourself under the protection of the contract, at least as much as you can. And so my proposal would be for the city to send a letter to the landfill indicating that there might be conditions under which leachate might be received, presuming that there was no, further fly ash in it, but only if they're willing to pay for the costs of it. Now, I will tell you, I don't believe they're going to be willing to do that, and I'm going to tell you why. They have been busy designing a facility on site to treat their leachate. And there will be an argument at some time about, how much of that cost or how that gets taken care of. And we're not here tonight to debate that, because I don't want to say something inadvertently that would hurt your defense in that case. But I do think we should send that letter so that we can bring ourselves under the protection of the contract. I feel very strongly about that, or I wouldn't be saying this to you tonight in a public meeting. But I think it is critical that you do that. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Mr. Mazares?
Yeah, and I just want to remind the council, when we brought the matter back in August, and just so, of course, please recognize that it's our job to make sure the council understands all of the situation, entire situation, before you make any decisions in this regard, which is what we did last time we brought this back. The information we have from Waste Connections that they provided us last time is that their anticipated damages, their numbers, is that the termination of the contract, the way it was done, is costing them about $1,300 a day, right? And so we are compelled to remind you that you have, has another 10 years left on this contract. So the potential damages number is $1,300 a day beginning June 17th until the expiration of the contract, which we had advised the council last time is about $300,000 a year. So which is one of the reasons why I want to make, so we think you have to remember that when you're looking at these issues about where it is. Mr. Cloud's suggestion to you stops the clock from, or the cash register from ticking on those damage amount. It now makes it a finite amount, and you're able to address it with understanding this is the ultimate risk on it as opposed to the other side. Thank you.
Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you. Dan, let me start at the beginning. You don't, Mr. Cloud, don't run off. Just kind of stay right there just a second.
I wasn't.
Thank you, sir.
Moving.
I appreciate that.
I'm too slow.
Dan, let's go back and look at the leachate disposal agreement 10 years ago. Let's go back 10 years ago. I spent about 2 hours today, maybe 2.5 hours, and I started looking through this, and I read it pretty much about halfway through, and I found enough stuff that you could read out of there. There's ins and outs of clauses that we could get out of that in a heartbeat. Almost a kid attorney could get out of that. I mean, it says if the citizens have got problems and they got complaints and they think that there is complaints there, and turn it up to the city council here, we can shut it down. And we did give them we terminated. Yes, we did. We terminated. And they had 60 days. It didn't matter if we gave them a termination or we gave them a letter and say, okay, you got 60 days now, or if we gave them a termination, either one. They had 60 days, they could still go and come back and say, wait a minute, last we've terminated you. They still had 60 days that they could respond, they could do anything they wanted to come back and tell us anything. They haven't said a thing. It's been going almost 9 months now, 8.5 months, whatever. It's quiet. I've asked Mr. Cloud, I've asked you, I've asked Mr. Sturgeon, anything going on, what's going on? It's quiet. Nobody from JED landfill they've not even popped their head up and said, we got a problem, we don't like this thing, and then Mr. Cloud, you're telling me, whoa, wait a minute, JED's getting ready to do something, they're gonna purify and clean their own stuff, so why do we even need to get into, say, oh, wait a minute, we're sorry, we made a mistake, we should have contacted you and given you 60 days.
Which of those questions would you...
Stop.
Oh,
Let me finish, please. I'll let you. When we said we give them 60 days in this contract, and I looked at it, looked 2.5 hours. You look at it and you read it, and what it says, there is ins and outs of anything. Any attorney looks at this. To me, I'm just a layman, but when I look at it, it looks real easy. It's not rocket science that you can't get out of this contract. Dan Manzares wrote it. Didn't you?
I participated in it, but I didn't write it.
Well, okay, you were a portion of it. You knew what was going on. Dan usually looks on for the city to take care of us. And when it says that we canceled the contract, we did, yes, back in June. They still had 60 days that JED's attorney could have come back and said, wait a minute, here's the 60 days, we're going to get it fixed. All they had to do was call us or contact Mr. Manzares and say, we're going to come back and we're going to 60 days and we're going to fix it. They didn't say a word. Oh, we're going to maybe lawsuit. That's it. They lawyered up maybe a little bit, and then they've stopped back in 8 months, 9 months. They haven't done a dang thing. So if you're going to chicken little me, tell me the truth. Because when I read this thing, and I want any citizen, ask for this. You can get a copy of this, and it won't cost you $2 or $3. If you can't afford it, I'll pay for it for you. Any citizen wants to have a copy of this, I will pay for it for you. And read it, and sit down and read what it says. There is enough ins and outs to this thing that you can get out of it in a heartbeat. You can tell me whatever you want to tell me, but what I read, and the way that I read it, maybe that's different.
Did you want me to answer a
Yes, sir, now you
question?
can.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought you wanted to ask me and have me answer a question. I wasn't sure after the last comment.
go right
about
ahead.
No matter what I said, you were not going to change your mind. But let me just say this. First of all, the statement you've made that we've had no contact from them is inaccurate.
Okay, go right ahead.
All right. They have been in contact with your city attorney. They have also been in contact with me most recently because I called to find out what was going on. They have made several offers to your city attorney.
I asked
But-
you to do that, didn't I?
I don't know.
I asked you in the meeting
Oh,
when
yes, you did.
I asked you for
Yes,
to
but
play the
let
dumb.
me please.
Dumb question. Yes,
Let
sir.
me
Go ahead.
finish.
No,
Okay.
we're talking back and forth.
Yes, okay. That's good. Mr. Manzares has been in touch with them. Now, it's true that after their last attempt to reach a settlement in this matter, they couldn't get a response back. They actually drafted a federal lawsuit and held off. Why? Because they were looking for ways to mitigate their damages. And so for a while, we believe they sent this stuff, and may still be sending it, over to another wastewater plant, which ultimately, because of the way you implemented this, you may end up paying for, which I think you would not want to do that. And secondly, they have begun designing and seeking the permit for an on-site leachate system, which we know not only because of communications from them, but because of information that we've received from other governmental agencies. So the statement that things went dark is not accurate. They have not gone dark. And in the contact I had with them, no, they're not rattling the saber yet, but they are holding their peace to see what the ultimate costs are. And then I believe they're going to seek legal redress. And my advice to you, after 40 years of practice, and while it's easy to say that a child can read it, I do not read it the same way you do. And I have drafted thousands of these documents, not only in Florida, but in other states, dealing with this very topic, as well as every other topic in electric, gas, water, sewer, and reclaimed water utilities. And I tell you, it does not have an open-ended clause, in my opinion. I think that there is language in here that I want to get you in a position to take advantage of. That's what I'm trying to do tonight. That's the only purpose I have in being here. I do not represent the landfill. In fact, I fought them harder than any person in this room to stop them from being built out there. Politics didn't work out, you know. You cannot win everything you try to do because none of us control outside events. You know, the landfill ended up there. God, I wish it hadn't. It's a terrible location for a landfill. But, you know, I don't hold that against every person that might have worked for the county back then because they didn't have any input in it. You know, that was a different day and a different set of decision makers. What we do have, what you have, you as a member of the city council and every person in here has the ability to do is mitigate damages and do the right thing. And I believe this is the right thing to do. I don't think it's going to lead to the reintroduction of cold fly ash in that landfill. I don't believe it's going to lead to the reintroduction of leachate into your wastewater plant. I do think it's going to put you in the best possible position to defend the people you've been hearing a lot from tonight, and that is your ratepayers, because you have a duty and an obligation, and I have a duty and an obligation to advise you as to how to maintain and minimize the impacts that they have to pay for until everything can be set right, whether it's the water system, the wastewater system, or treating leachate.
But Mr. Cloud, I feel like if we give them the 60 days, you ain't never going to turn it back off.
I have
Once
not,
you
that's
get it
not what I
started,
said.
once you let it get
Okay.
started, you cannot get it stopped.
Well, I didn't say we would let it
The
start.
lawsuit will be
I didn't
more,
say
10
that I would
times
write a letter
stronger.
or that I would have you send them a letter that says it would start. It would say we would consider it, but only after they had addressed the following concerns. One, no more fly ash. You know, they've stopped it. We want to make sure that it stays stopped. And two is that they address the cost concerns of BOD and ammonia, which are huge costs and concerns. We had Brian run the numbers on it, and it's a staggering cost. If I were them, I wouldn't want to send leachate to that plant anymore. It's going to cost them way more than it will to treat it on site. I know because I've advised landfills that were already built, about the costs of dealing with leachate.
So what you're saying, they would have to do a pre-treat? In other words,
yeah,
JED landfill would have to do a pre-treat
but
themselves?
their pre-treat keeps it on their site.
They
It
would
does
have
not
to,
send it to us.
I just want you to tell me yes or no.
Yes.
They would have to do the pre-treat right there on site at JED landfill?
If they continue on with what they are planning on doing, that's what it appears they're
What
doing.
you're planning for the 60 days is going to tell them that they would have to do a pre-treat. Is that correct?
That would be one of the options, yes, sir.
Okay, and the other option was that instead of a penny per thousand gallons, that we would probably increase it because we've been subsidizing the citizens. You citizens have been subsidizing the cost of leachate to be cleaned.
Well, not
We've been
since
paying,
June.
excuse me, we've been paying probably, at least what your estimates, what you gave me, somewhere about 6 to 7 times what that 1 cent per thousand gallons that they've been doing for the last 10 years. We've been subsidizing, paying 6 or 7 times what they have been paying. That $13,000 per year they're paying, we've been paying that times 6 or 7 times that year, each year. We've been subsidizing it.
I don't believe that that's accurate.
Well,
I
I'm telling you
believe
what you
that
told me a week ago.
May I speak?
Yes, sir.
I believe that the usage they had was making unavailable to the city the ability to utilize its full plant. I don't think that the additional costs of operation was that much of a subsidy. But I do believe if it were to continue at that level, that it would hold the city back in the ability to use the plant. That's a different problem. It does not mean the city has been subsidizing them to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars. That is not true.
Okay. Could I ask some, Mr. Mayor, you bear with me a little bit more? I got a couple more questions.
We've got other people to speak to, okay? Let Mr. Manzara speak.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. And just 2 quick points. Mr. Cloud addressed a couple of things that I want to address specifically with regard to Mr. Cooper's comments. But first thing I think we are compelled to tell you, we disagree completely with your reading of that contract. Absolutely. And I'm not sure what young or kid attorney you talked to, but we don't think that they are reading that contract correctly. We disagree with that. Had the city provided the prior notice, which the contract requires, and afforded them the 60 days to do that, we would agree 100% with you. That being said, all we are suggesting to you right now is this is a path, and it's entirely the city council's decision. This is a path to get this matter, which puts the city in a precarious legal position with great risk financially, to get it into a position where it can be better defended and hopefully reach a good, successful result with the least cost possible to the city. And we don't think it currently is in that posture right now.
Mr. Manzares, or Mr. Sturgeon, I did ask the question probably 2 or 3 months back. I asked the question, could we get an attorney that we would hire to do all of this legal checking? Not somebody not locally used from the city. And that was a motion in the second. We got it pretty much, I thought it was done.
We could
Tell
check,
me no?
we could
You
check
went-
the
you went
transcript,
back
but
to
no.
Ray Robertson.
No, sir. That was not direction from council to go outside. I was directed to hire an environmental utilities attorney that had experience. And
I'll
that's
get
what
a
I did.
copy and I'll bring it to you. We'll go through it. I believe it was.
Mr. Mayor, just one more comment too. And remember, we had various discussions, as Mr. Cloud pointing out, with Waste Connections. In fact, as I said when we started this discussion tonight, at the August meeting, we brought back to you information from Waste Connections. That happened after there were at least 2, maybe 3 meetings among staff and the representative of Waste Connections. And then there was even meetings after the August 22nd date. So as remind the council that the reason why we came back in August after the initial action in June was because we were having ongoing discussions and we had been contacted with them and we had been advised that they were planning on filing a lawsuit against the city.
Thank you. Do any other council members have a question you'd like to ask Mr. Cloud? Do you have anything else you'd like to share?
No, sir.
I'd like to thank you. It's obvious that you are eminently qualified, and the recommendation that you brought forward is a way out for us. It seems to me, without that accomplishes the objective that we certainly need to accomplish for the betterment of our city and for our citizens. So thank you.
Yes, sir.
So Mayor, I'll have questions after. I'm assuming.
I'm fixing to open it up to the citizens. Any other questions for the council?
I'll have some questions after.
All right.
Citizens get a chance to speak.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Laura Tweed again.
Laura Tweed, 2808 Mead Avenue, Health and Human Rights Advocate. My questions that I have this evening at first are directed to Mr. Manzares. You mentioned $1,300 a day or $300,000 a year. I would like to know, how is it costing them $1,300 a day or $300,000 a year when they're currently taking the leachate, mixing it back in with a coal ash, making it a higher concentrate? The next question I have is, this letter that y'all are talking about wanting to write, you better write something big in this letter, because I've been notified that the Class 1 landfill is leaching. And when it comes to this contract, I feel in my heart and my soul, like we mentioned before, bringing in Bob Balcock and people that deal with this on a day-to-day basis outside the state is huge for the city of St. Cloud, because you're dealing with something very big here. $4 million is a large lawsuit. When you're sitting back and dealing with small-time people, now Florida, I don't mean any disrespect, Mr. Cloud, but I'm just telling you, there's lawsuits throughout the whole USA going on right now over the same problems. And when I sit there and I deal with a lot of different people from a lot of different directions, that tells me that leachate is not leaving that plant, that the current Class 1 landfill is leaching, and that leachate is being thrown in with a coal ash, and it's at higher concentrated levels. You said that the last time that the leachate left and came to our source was on 6/14/19. I just can't imagine how many times leachate's been added to that coal ash, and the concentration levels are how much higher than they were back then. Also, employees have been bringing up risk factors, wanting to wear masks and gloves. They're told they're not allowed to wear them because it will scare the local community. I'd also like to know, the employees that worked at the landfill, what happened to the sick ones that were removed? Where did they go? That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Manzares.
As I indicated earlier, the cost of $1,300 a day were numbers that were provided by Waste Connections with regard to their calculation as alleged damages. It was the cost, it's referred to as what's called cover damages in a contractual dispute. It's the cost for them to take the leachate that they normally would bring here and to bring it to another facility. It involves an additional cost at the disposal site, as well as trucking costs and fuel sites. That's their numbers. But we haven't dove in to look at those numbers. And just remind the council, the issue about what's going on at the JED landfill is beyond the scope. You have no control over that landfill, and none whatsoever. All we're talking, what this has to do is with obviously the material that comes from that landfill, but you don't have control of what gets put in that landfill, whether it itself is leaching, whether there's a problem with that. There's a different jurisdictional body that addresses that.
Thank you. Hewitt Crumpler?
Good evening, Hewitt Crumpler, Michigan Avenue, St. Cloud, Florida. This ties right into what I started out saying. Public safety is number one, and being fiscally responsible. And this is exactly what I was talking about. So what I would say here, and I wish the city manager, here he is, the city manager was in the room. First of all, the hiring of the law firm and the hiring of the people doing the testing and the hiring of, I guess Mr. Cloud is an attorney, I'm not sure that they do comply with the direction that was given, because in my memory, Mr. Manzares was trying very hard not to be part of that process, but in the end was part of it. So I think we should look at the tape and see actually what was the and this is something you guys make mistakes all the time on. When somebody makes a motion, you should read back exactly the motion that you're going to implement, because it would get rid of a lot of confusion on situations like this. So in the future, my suggestion would be for have Mr. Manzares read the motion back that is going to be, that was voted on and is going to be acted on. It would help us a lot in terms of avoiding bad situations. But I will say a couple of things about what was said. First of all, if ever there was a case where we did not get the right law firm, okay, or the right individual here, I don't care what the mayor thinks about his credentials. I am not impressed. And I would say if I had hired this lawyer, I'd fire him today and I'd go out and get somebody else. And I might go and look at the people that were suggested by the citizens who know about this particular topic, because I don't think we got the best. And I said earlier, we deserve the best. When there's something this important, we shouldn't take somebody who may or may not be the right person. We have to know that we've got the best. So that's the first thing I'd say. Second thing I'd say is every contract begins with intent. Every contract begins with intent. When the county decided to accept coal ash, they changed the intent of the leachate that we had agreed to take. They did not inform us. They did not ask us. They did it without any any input from the city. That changed the intent of the original content. So they cannot hang their hats on the content of the contract. They cannot hang their hats on the 60-day thing. And by the way, if we were going to do the 60-day notification, Mr. Manzares should have stepped up and suggested before we take any action that we do the 60-day notification, give them a chance to correct it. And I understand that nobody wanted to do that. Why? Because it puts public safety, public health at risk, and it's not worth it. I don't care if it costs $3 million in the end, and I'm sure it won't. But we should countersue the heck out of them because they changed the intent of the contract. They put us in this particular situation, and it was not necessary. And it's all because of certain people wanting to line their pockets with money and not putting the citizens' safety first. So my suggestion would be go get another law firm, go get another testing agency, and start over, okay? Because this idea of putting us in a corner is unacceptable.
Thank you. Mike Lella?
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
May I address?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Madam Deputy Clerk, could you read the minutes from the 8/22/19 meeting concerning the matter of selecting an attorney?
The motion by Deputy Mayor Matheny made a motion for the city manager to obtain an environmental attorney and consultant for the appropriate action and testing that need to be done. Councilmember Cooper seconded the motion. Mayor Blackwell called for roll, and after roll by City Clerk Linda Jaworski, motion carried, vote 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mike?
Good evening.
Well, can I add to that?
You-
Can I add to that?
Excuse me.
I have my notes from the June meeting of what our motion was in June when we terminated the contract. So Councilmember Cooper made a motion and Deputy Mayor Matheny made a second to determine there is an imminent threat to our reclaimed water supply, and we wish to no longer proceed with acceptance of the leachate material from the JED landfill. And that was voted on 5-0 to accept that motion. So that's what I had my notes from back in June. So that's not just the law firm part, that's the actual motion that kicked this whole thing.
I just want to go back, Mr. Cooper. You know, you said something right now, if you could repeat that, please.
Well, I think if
You just said I was told to get a not a local attorney, and I guess I'm,
No, I think when it originally set was just getting an attorney.
well, I just had to read
Special
the motion,
Read it
and I
again.
did exactly what I was told. Can you read it again, please, Deputy Mayor?
One more time.
Deputy Mayor Matheny made a motion for the city manager to obtain an environmental attorney and consultant for the appropriate action and testing that needed to be done. Councilmember Cooper seconded the motion. Mayor Blackwell called for roll, and after roll call by City Clerk Linda Jaworski, motion carried, vote 5-0.
Is environmental attorney Mr. Tom Cloud?
That's correct.
Can we move forward now?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
I don't agree with
All right.
that. Yes, sir.
So state your name and address for the record, please.
And good evening, Mike Lello, 2423 Regent Way, Kissimmee. Of course, the reason I came here tonight is because of your no vote back in the summer, and we said that we would obviously back you and support you. That's why I came here today. I don't really I mean, I heard what you said, you read back the minutes, but from what we wanted, what the citizens wanted was someone unbiased, someone outside to take a look at the data. I mean, we don't get it, we never get a chance to look at the data, to examine it, to question and answer. We show up in a meeting. I mean, in theory, everything Mr. Cloud said sounds okay, but there's no data backing it. We don't really know what's going on. And what I'm afraid is okay, we'll just, take it on, and then we're going to be accepting leachate again. And aren't we still accepting coal ash from other parts in the state and out of state?
No.
So that's out.
The city doesn't operate a landfill, doesn't accept any refuse. City of St. Cloud does not operate a landfill, does not accept any coal ash or any solid waste for landfill disposal.
So the only thing was the coal ash from Puerto Rico then?
Again, the city never accepted coal ash from
Okay.
Puerto Rico. We're in the
Okay.
wrong place for that.
But it's still going to the landfill.
The landfill is owned by the county.
Right, no, but I'm saying it's going to the landfill, so it still has coal ash in it, or it might? Okay.
We
So,
were getting leachate.
excuse me?
We were getting leachate coming here.
Right.
And we stopped it back in June.
Okay,
It was a derivative from coal ash.
from the coal, that's what I'm saying. So
Yes.
we're still getting leachate from coal ash.
Not now. We stopped.
Okay, all right.
But they're wanting to restart it and give them 60 days.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They want to restart it, and we're going to do the same process again. Okay,
Okay.
all right. So what I would like to see is more of, we have people in the audience behind us that are knowledgeable, they're experts, they're professionals in the field or knowledgeable on the subject. And what the public would like to hear and see is questions, which we never seem to get those questions answered because everything happens so fast. You present it, I hear this,
We couldn't get the questions.
and that's what I'm saying. So how can you make a vote on something if you're not getting, I have not heard a single thing since the meeting. And I know I'm the public, but if the attorneys are talking and you're not hearing anything, how do you get to vote on? How do you get to examine the data? And what I really hate is, thank you, Commissioner Cooper, for questioning everything. And I really don't like when someone is passionate for the citizens, and then it seems like you have to belittle what he's saying.
They're laughing at it, yeah. I understand.
Take what he sees in the contract and ask the question and have it answered, and let us hear it. And I think you owe that to the citizens and owe it to yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Monique Constantino.
Hi, Monique Costantino, 1870 Big Buck Drive. St. Cloud, Florida 34772. And as a citizen, you know, when I hear that a firm was supposed to have been hired that's going to make a decision or making a recommendation to you all about what to do that's going to affect the financial affairs of one of our county commissioners, family members, and there's just all kind of people involved. And so when you hear that there's a Central Florida, Orlando firm that regularly contributes to candidates that's involved in making this recommendation that we take back leachate in St. Cloud, then any reasonable person would question the integrity of that decision-making process. I would like to see an independent firm from maybe Seattle or somewhere where they're not involved with any deals in Central Florida, and they come here and then, I also would like to understand, there's a guy named Hal Schmidt Jr. who's supposed to be really good apparently, and he came up with some answers to some things that said that we're not gonna have any recourse if we sue, if this company sues us because there was nothing there. Well, I don't know who he is. I haven't seen his CV. I haven't seen any of of what he tested for. I just don't buy it. It seems too pretty and tied up in a little bow that we're going to start taking leachate back.
It's in a circle.
I don't buy it. And I also would like to understand the exact list of chemicals that the original water testing company was asked to test for. So I would like to see if we could find out what their original request was that was sent to them, and if they sent back a summary of their findings. I would like to see a summary of their findings from the April 2019 tests that were done. Thank you.
Monique, I have that information, and I will get it on the board as soon as we get a chance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Michaela Wells.
Hello, Michaela Wells, 9040 Mercury Drive, St. Cloud, Hollapore. First of all, I would like to start with that I am here to protect my daughter, and I do not care what it's going to cost to keep her healthy and safe. She's 11. She has potentially, unless she's going to move down the road, 70 plus years in this county, and any minor threat to her health is not acceptable. Neither is it for any other resident or any other child. So first of all, I don't quite understand this whole letter deal. We're going to send them a letter, say fix certain things, then we take the leachate again, and then we give them a 60-day cancellation note, and then we assume they're just going to disappear. I find that questioning to tell them it's dangerous, but it's okay for 60 days. Plus, what does 60 days mean gallon-wise? I mean, is it one truck, 100 gallon, 100,000 gallons of leachate? I mean, the 60 days can do a lot of damage to the environment and to our water. Next question is regarding the tests. Who exactly did those tests? What were the tests? What was tested? Was it the wastewater when it was already here? Was it directly leachate? Was it pre-treated leachate? Was it untreated leachate? Were heavy metals tested? There's a lot more related to coal ash than just the ammonia issue and such that were brought up. If we did not have somebody do it independently, hired by the city, I do not trust the landfill to do their own testing. I wouldn't trust their results. When was the last test done? The coal ash started in April, came all the way through August, September. So testing should have been done during that time frame, plus maybe as late as last month to really figure out what's going on with the leachate. If we're referring back to the amount of Puerto Rican coal ash that was coming. Then also, with the cost and the leachate. I mean, what are they gonna pay if they were going to bring the leachate back? And who's checking on the numbers that they're giving the city? I mean, how do we really know it's costing them X amount per day, per week? I mean, they need to show us receipt and some kind of a proof. I mean, I can throw any number out there I want. Also, regarding the legal counsel, you know, I'm not no expert, but it seems he is focused on protecting the city, which is fine, but we are focused on protecting our health. So for us, the money issue isn't really important. Start a GoFundMe page. I contribute on a monthly basis what I can afford. I don't care. I want my family to be protected. And it's not acceptable in any matter to keep accepting this leachate. I don't care if it's for 1 day, 60 days, or 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Jessica Sullivan.
Jessica Sullivan, 714 Kentucky Avenue. Andrew Wheeler, former coal industry lobbyist, now head of EPA, has recently authorized states and territories like Puerto Rico to suspend groundwater monitoring for landfills and coal ash ponds. He also raised the acceptable limits for lead, cobalt, lithium, and molybdenum in coal ash leachate. Do you want to know why? Because AES Corporation wanted him to. AES is responsible for creating some of the most toxic, nasty coal ash that is far more toxic than a lot of the coal ash that we generate from a lot of our American plants here, including the coal ash from Puerto Rico, the same coal ash that we have over 300,000 tons sitting in Holopah right now. AES has also been responsible for contaminating drinking water in the U.S. and especially in Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. AES also shipped the coal ash from Puerto Rico to Georgia and Florida most recently, where it sits right there in our Osceola County landfill. However much it costs to defend our people, you need to do it. They may not be very forthcoming about what is in this coal ash. In this exact same material coming from Puerto Rico, they have found unacceptably high levels of selenium, lithium, molybdenum, arsenic, lead, cadmium, boron, sulfate, thallium, vanadium, mercury, cobalt, nickel, chromium. These aren't things we normally have floating around in a lot of our wastewater that we're processing here. There was one story I was reading from the Dominican Republic who accepted Puerto Rican coal ash. They needed to get rid of it. They were under a lot of pressure to get it off the island because the people there were complaining, well, they dumped it on another island. And in that town, they were told that the stuff is safe and, you know, it sat around in bad places. And then all of a sudden, women started having miscarriages. And then they started having babies with 2 heads and no arms and organs that were outside of their bodies when they were being born. And you know what the government said later? They're like, well, nobody ever really did the studies necessary. We didn't know that much. They said it was safe. And thinking about it now, we could have done more. I don't want that to be you all in a few years because I know more than I want to know about our wastewater system now. And I know that we re-inject it directly down into the aquifer. Yes, us, St. Cloud, we do that. And when it's mixed with this coal ash leachate, we're directly putting this stuff back into our drinking water source. We sprinkle this stuff all over our lawns and our golf courses. What kind of implications do you think that's going to have?
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Valerie Anderson.
Valerie Anderson, 714 Kentucky Avenue, St. Cloud. When I suggested perhaps that you hire an environmental attorney, I mean, Gray Robinson is not what came to mind. I don't particularly like the politicians that they contribute to in general. But I'm not going to dispute his assessment that no more foreign coal ash is going to come into JED. I mean, probably not. I don't know. Or that we're not going to get any more leachate in our system from the landfill. I can't really speak to that. But what I do know about our municipal solid waste system, our wastewater treatment system, is that it's not designed to handle the kind of contaminants that we are concerned about that might be produced from coal ash. Is most likely produced from leachate that's been mixed in with coal ash. And I would hope that if Waste Connections was interested in having the locals, not opposing reintroduction of leachate into our system, they might be providing us with the schematics of how they might treat this so that there wouldn't be heavy metals or dioxins in this leachate that would be delivered to our system, which our system is not currently able to handle. And as Ms. Sullivan pointed out, what happens to this leachate is that it's injected into our aquifer or sprinkled on recreational facilities or on lawns in the middle of subdivisions. So the concerns we expressed in June about the landfill and its leachate have not decreased in any way. They've not diminished, that the coal ash is no longer coming in to the landfill. I mean, it is currently in there, it's getting rained on, and the leachate is circulating, and they're maybe building a plant to do some sort of evaporation treatment of it. But we have not undergone any additional retrofits to our wastewater treatment plant to be able to better handle this leachate. So, and I'm not usually in the business of arguing with lawyers, especially lawyers that are supposed to be representing my interests, in assessing what might be the risks of a contract, of doing certain things under a contract. But I am concerned that the laws are not protecting us regarding how much, what sort of contaminants are in leachate and what sort of contaminants are treated for in our wastewater treatment systems, and that this specifically is being re-injected into our aquifer. And so I am really glad that the council did protect our health more than our current regulations are doing, and I hope that the council continues to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Ariel Hartney.
Mr. Hartman, or Ms. Hartman, can I put this on the screen and you could talk about it? Because you and I had talked about this, so, yes, ma'am. And I'm going to give you this copy and these two here.
So this I'm sorry, my name's Ariel Hartney, 199 East Cedarwood Circle, Kissimmee, Florida. The graph on the screen represents data of a company who shall not be named. But you can see a very clear increase in the level of average COD concentration, which is chemical oxygen demand. And that measures, it's a basic measurement of inorganic and organic concentration, which requires a certain amount of oxygen to be broken down in the waste stream. So I would like Brian Wheeler to speak on that after my comments are finished. But according to what I'm looking at, I would not argue that the leachate characterization has not changed over the course of the past 10 years. It clearly has. And even if you're looking at one analyte, it's very clear that things are different. Actually, sorry, I just realized the axis didn't include the values.
There, thank you.
There you go.
Yes, ma'am.
So now we're up to about 18,000 ppm.
Need to go to the mic, ma'am.
Sorry. 18,000 parts per million as of the most recent sample data that was available. And back in 2009, we were around 2,600 ppm. It's quite different. And this is before coal ash. So this is, the last sample was in April
Now, how many
of 2019.
How many more homes would this take? Using
Well, Brian Wheeler will, if he will get up here and talk about what COD is exactly and how it relates to the typical values that he sees
I've
in the
got that.
wastewater treatment facility
Yes,
and
ma'am.
compared to how many homes would be contributing an equivalent amount of domestic sewage to account for this amount. And basically, the bottom line is that this coming into your leachate or into your wastewater treatment facility would impact how much disinfectant you have to use, how much aeration time it takes to process, and it affects how bacteria, like in the whole nitrification process. So it does definitely impact your wastewater treatment facility, and I think that would mean that you're within your rights to say that it does give you like reason to have operational concerns at your facility as far as time and money. Regardless of whether we argue that coal ash is an imminent danger, it still does impact your wastewater treatment process. Thank you.
Ms. Argo?
Yes.
First, where were these tests from? Like, which documentation did you get this from?
These are data packets that were provided to the city of St. Cloud from the JED landfill.
From their actual leachate?
Yes, that's the actual leachate values. And
Took me 2.5 weeks to get it. They don't want to give it out. They want to hide it.
That's not true, Mr. Cooper. I gave it to you within 72
I
hours.
had to argue for.
No, you did
all
not.
didn't want
I gave
give
it to you.
me.
Mr. Cooper,
You didn't
that's
wanna
twice
give it to
tonight
me.
you
That's
questioned
fine.
my integrity.
All right.
I gave it to you within 3 days.
You did, at first you didn't want to give it to me.
No, sir, that's not correct.
Okay, not a problem.
No, that's not fair.
okay, so, but can we call Brian Wheeler up here to talk about this because
Yes.
he's the expert?
Well, I think, Mayor, I think
First
there's been
off-
a lot of questions. I think you should go through public comment, and staff can come back and address many of the issues that are brought up to the extent we can.
Does anyone else wish to speak that hasn't spoken? Yes. Please state your name and address.
Members of the council, I'm David Meisner. I live at 3410 Polly's Loop North, St. Cloud, Florida. I've listened to these issues, and I agree with a lot of the issues on the health concerns. But the thing you're addressing tonight is what legal action you need to take to get out of this contract. The legal advice Mr. Cloud gave you and Mr. Manzares gave you is very straightforward. You have reason to have conditionality. If the letter goes to them with conditions, you will not accept it with certain categories and tests being done prior to that, which meets your health concerns, then you do not accept it. But I think the best thing you can do today is listen to your attorneys, go with their reaction. You will end up in federal court regardless, but the federal system is a little different than what the state system is. And you have to do it and make sure you dot your T's, cross the I's, whatever you want to do. But I recommend you take this, let it go through Mr. Cloud, Mr. Manzares, a letter with conditionality before you accept anything that has to meet certain health conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meister. Would anyone else that hasn't spoken like to speak to the council? Please step forward, state your name and address for the record, please. And please fill out a form before you leave.
Sammy Quinones, 2400 West Lindell Drive in Kissimmee, Florida. I just got a few questions. I just want to give you guys to have something into the future and the past. We talked about some big numbers here. We looked at $300,000. Over 10 years, you're looking at maybe $3 million, if this is accurate. Now, let's pretend you guys went back and started with the whole accepting leachate and all that. Now, the contract is up 10 years from now. All of a sudden, the possible illness began. Now what? You know? How much would a class action lawsuit cost the city later if it's discovered that the imminent threat is actually here? You know? Right now, you're looking at cities, states, counties all over the country preparing themselves for a possible coronavirus, you know, and they're preparing ahead of time. So what is the city doing when it comes to this if you really decide to move forward with this deal? Lastly, these tests, who is performing these? Independent lab workers or government employees bringing in the results? Now, if you can check the contract and everything in there was met, can you mirror and match it and see if there was any breach of the contract where the city can verify, you know, if there is a breach? You guys would have to speak with your city attorney, and he can guide you on that. That's his area of expertise. And lastly, you know, I'm just going to throw this out there, you know. The city would have to, you need to know, you know, of a whole audit and maybe see what other companies are out there that are benefiting from the government subsidies, just like the city was costing them more, as the council member here was talking about how much is costing the city more than what it's actually the private company to do it. If you were to use all that money, you can improve the water problem that we've been seeing here lately. Have a great day.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? If not, we'll move to discussion and questions by council. Mr. Cooper, Councilman Cooper.
Brian Wheeler, could you come up?
Mr. Wheeler, you can come up. Thank you. Can you come on up?
And Mayor, Mr. Cooper, if I may, I think at some point it would be appropriate for Mr. Wheeler to explain where the water quality that comes out of the plant after it goes to the treatment facility to alleviate some of the concerns regarding the quality of the water that ultimately comes through the treatment plant, essentially the reclaimed water and where it's being done. I think the public needs to be aware of that because there were some
Oh, yeah, I
there's some
agree
comments
with
out there that water is dangerous and that water is harmful and people are spraying it on their lawns and tracking into their homes. But I think that needs to be addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler.
Mr. Wheeler, in order to make an informed decision on accept the leachate from JED landfill, we need to consider the information before us. And wherever there is any information that would, you know, inform us, and I think there's some of it's missing. So let me go back and ask the data, excuse me, the data provided does not include results from any sampling events after April of 2019. That would have shown that the clear difference, not having leachate in there, would have shown how much less there was versus the ammonia, 20 times more than what it would have been. Pretty correct?
I don't know if I followed your question.
Well, we didn't have, do we have any sampling or anything after April of 2019 and in December?
Well, December, we weren't accepting any leachate.
I understand, but
So
don't we still do kind of sampling to see what we've got?
We test the effluent from the plant in accordance with our permit with DEP.
Okay.
And it's required, if I remember correctly, that we test it for the primary drinking water standards once a year, and that primary drinking water standards includes, I think as Mr. Manzarez was trying to get at, includes a long variety of constituents that are required to test for: metals, pesticides, herbicides, a number of things that are required so that the reclaimed water is supposed to meet the primary drinking water standards, and that's what's required under our DEP program. And yes, we do that on an annual basis because that's required regardless. It has nothing to do with the leachate. That's part of the requirement of having a permit that use reclaimed water.
But it would have showed how much lower the ammonia and the selenium.
Not in the effluent. The ammonia and the CBOD is related to the leachate that's coming into the plant. And as the lady was speaking previously, was the impact that had, and that's precisely what Mr. Cloud was also pointing out, was that the increased organic concentration and the increased ammonia concentration, which was several times substantially greater than domestic wastewater, requires additional capacity within the wastewater treatment plant to be able to treat it beyond what the gallon. Just for example, you're taking 6,000 gallon tanker load of leachate. That's equivalent to maybe, I'll say, 120,000 gallons of domestic wastewater. They were being charged on the basis of 6,000 gallons of wastewater, when in reality, it should have been charged on the basis of 120. And those are just I'm just using comparison, those are not exact numbers, but I'm just saying, but that's the point that Mr. Cloud was making, and that's the point the lady who was just up here with her graph was making, and that's the same point
Pretty much
that.
the point same point I made, I think it's cost the citizens are paying the excess. We're subsidizing.
Or, or we losing revenue, whichever way you want to look at it.
Losing a lot of revenue. Yes, sir. Considering that the conditional use permit that was approved by the Osceola County BOCC in April 2019 and the coverage expressed by the citizens of Osceola County, I want to have the answer to the couple of questions. Where is the leachate samples collected after the sampling April of 2019? There wasn't any, is what you're telling me, right?
There wasn't any leachate samples that I'm aware of. We as the city at the wastewater plant, we don't sample and test the leachate at the wastewater plant.
Okay, so
Because the leachate is taken up to where your transfer station is, where the old landfill is, and it's I would say metered in at that point into the wastewater system and flows to the regular wastewater system to the wastewater plant.
Okay. If this is no data available since 2019, I don't think that we have gotten the informed decision here because we don't know anything after that. We stopped it. Of course, we don't want to see about bringing it back because we're going to be in the same place. It seems like that leachate may have negative impacts downstream, and you're saying no. Can you elaborate how it?
Well, let's start off with the fact that you've been accepting leachate for a number of years into the treatment plant, and you've also had to test to maintain your compliance on your reclaimed water. There's been no violation of any constituent in your reclaimed water, and you've been receiving leachate into your wastewater plant for a number of years. And the landfill, unfortunately, part of my career, I dealt with landfills. Leachate from a landfill, whether it has coal ash or doesn't have coal ash, is some of the nastiest stuff you can deal with as far as waste, because everything people can put in their garbage goes into the landfill, and that includes batteries, pesticides, paints, you name it, it goes into the landfill, along with food waste and many other things. That's what creates the constituents, the real constituents that you should be concerned about that come out in the leachate. When they pass through the treatment process, what comes out in the reclaimed water effluent when it's tested at the primary drinking water standards does not indicate that it has any significant impact. A lot of your metals and stuff, when you go through the biological process, actually get absorbed into the biomass and end up going out in the biosolids, which is the sludge, and right now you're hauling that right back to the landfill. So it's making a loop.
Okay, all right, let's say we accept the leachate tomorrow. And tell me about the Gresham and the metals data. How much of that would be coming in? Do you know that? Or?
Well, it would be, I would hazard a guess, it would be similar to what was coming before.
Okay.
It's not going to dramatically change.
Okay, but those pictures that I've got that she didn't show, but ammonia was like 20 times and the selenium was 7 or 8
you're
times.
You're still going to have higher.
I mean, it's just, the whole thing is just costing the citizens like 10 times what we're getting.
And what Mr. Cloud was proposing, that you would advise the landfill that if you want to bring your leachate, you're going to have to pay the true cost. If you want to bring it back, you're going to have to pay the true cost of handling the leachate. You can't pay what you were paying previously. You're going to have to pay what would be the true cost of handling the leachate.
Well, if whatever they're paying up there in North Carolina, South Carolina, wherever, whatever they're paying to carry it up there now, and they're paying 7 cents per 1,000 gallons, let's say what you gave me, a rough representation, 7 cents per 1,000 gallons, up there, we'd have to have that or more, and as soon as we say 7 cents per 1,000 gallons, they're going to be right here knocking on the door, and they're going to keep coming. It's not going to stop. So it's fundamentally, do you really want to keep going? Because I think they can meet and exceed everything that what was Mr. Tom Cloud is going to say and put in writing, I think they're going to go ahead and say, yeah, we can do that. We can fix this, and we can fix this. And as soon as they drop that first 10,000 gallons or whatever it is, it's going to keep coming. It's not going to stop. No.
Need to wrap up for the council.
I guess that's it. I'll let you go.
Thank you. Councilmember Trace.
Okay. Mr. Cloud, I have a couple questions, and I have one more for Brian. Mr. Wheeler, when he gets on. During your presentation, you made a statement that the leachate does not violate any state or federal laws.
No, what I said was that the effluent that's coming out of your wastewater plant does not violate any of the state or federal water quality standards, and that's based on your own data.
And that's the one thing I wanted to point out, is that all that proves is our wastewater treatment plant does its job at
That's right.
treating it. That doesn't mean that what's coming in doesn't.
And in point of fact, and I think you've heard adequate testimony tonight, that the loadings that were coming in are too high, and they weren't paying what they should have been paying. I don't think anybody disagrees with that tonight. And all I'm trying to do is get y'all back into a position where you can advance that claim and defend yourselves without being hammered with a bunch of unnecessary damages. That's all I'm trying to do.
Okay. And based on our contract for accepting that leachate, what is the dispute resolution outlined in that contract?
Well, we're supposed to send them notice before we cut them off, and obviously we didn't manage to do that. Despite a comment earlier, I think your lawyer actually did ask somebody to do that at the time, but it's water under the bridge, and I don't want to focus on what happened. I mean, we can't fix that, but what we can fix now is to put them on notice that, hey, your leachate, in fact, was causing a problem, and we are going to give you an opportunity to explain to us how you want to move forward. It does not mean we're going to say, oh, yeah, you can come bring your leachate back in, because clearly they can't do that. And here's why. It's got too much loadings in it, and it's going to cost them. Brian, we did the math. It's pretty, it would be, they're not sending it to North Carolina. We're sending it over to Lakeland, Florida.
All right, where it's coming from, wherever.
Right. But I mean, they were not paying, they were paying a fraction of what we would be charging them. So it would actually be cheaper for them to have the plant on site. That's why I think it's going to stay there, because it's going to be way cheaper than paying us.
So why don't we just wait and see what they're going to do?
Well, if you wait and see what they're going to do, they're going to hit you with a lawsuit and ask for a bunch of damages because you did nothing and because you didn't follow the contract. That's what's going to happen.
So for us to get back into compliance with that, I don't want to take it back into our system.
Understood. I don't want you to have to.
And if we need to give them a 60-day notice, could we just pay the cost of transporting that to somewhere else? Make them whole with the contract by paying that additional cost for 60 days?
There's going to be discussions about that, and I don't want to go too far that way because I don't want you to have to pay for something you don't have to.
Okay. And you didn't answer the question about the contract dispute resolution.
The contract dispute resolution.
It's got, essentially, the way the contract reads is, once they've been given the notice, the written notice, which is why we keep talking about, Mr. Cloud's talking about a letter, that essentially means written notice under the contract.
Opportunity to address.
Yeah, opportunity to cure it. They have 60 days. If they don't cure it within 60 days, then it's deemed a breach of the contract, and the city can terminate the contract. But from a dispute there's no arbitration or any proceeding. We go right into court.
For a violation of contract?
Yeah.
If they.
Yeah, breach. Yeah.
And then, Mr. Wheeler, is our wastewater treatment plant designed to treat industrial waste or just normal household?
It's designed to treat organic waste.
Okay.
And I'm not trying to evade the question. The issue is it's a biological process. It's designed, and biological processes are designed to treat organic waste. You can have industrial waste that's highly organic. Again, taking the leachate part of it is highly organic. The wastewater treatment plant can treat that. You just have to understand that it takes up more capacity in the plant than what normal domestic wastewater does. So if they are building a pretreatment system at the landfill, most likely it's going to be a biological process. It's just, it's going to use similar, process that you have at the wastewater plant. It's just going to be designed for the concentration that the leachate has.
Okay, because there's probably a reason they take it to a plant or a facility in Lakeland, because it's designed to treat that type of waste, right? Just other non-organic type liquid
And
waste.
without hazard to guess to make this worse, but when I was at Toho, we treated the leachate from the Southport landfill for the county. And we treated the waste from the Gatorade factory at Poinciana Industrial Park. The BOD for the wastewater from the industrial park Gatorade was 20,000 BOD. The stuff you saw here was 2,000 to 3,000 BOD. The stuff from Gatorade is 10 times more concentrated than what's coming out of the leachate. But Gatorade paid the cost of treating that high in organic waste. And the same thing for the county with the leachate we took from Southport. They paid in accordance with what the concentrations were within the leachate from Southport.
Okay. And then this might be a question a little bit for procurement, a little bit for you, but how long would it take for us to conduct a rate study to outline the sewage treatment rates for industrial type things? I'm worried about the BOD and ammonia, but then also if we take in fats, oils, and greases from folks that pump out grease traps, how does that get treated? And does that go through our treatment train? Or?
No, I know all that. Well, you can create within your ordinance a rate basis based on two things, which is what we had at Toho was organics and ammonia, which are the two components you've heard tonight.
Mm-hmm.
On fats, oils, and greases, the same thing. What you do is you actually create a concentration that it has to be below for you to accept. In other words, I'm not going to accept anything above this level. And that's when you come back to what you have somewhat here in the city. You have a grease trap program. You require all your food establishments to have grease traps, and then you have to monitor that to make sure they're functional. If somebody then is discharging grease above, or actually discharging grease above that level, then the same thing. You take an enforcement action against them. And you create what's called an industrial waste ordinance, what's called local limits, which you should go for specific industries and say, whatever your wastewater treatment is, whatever your waste is, this is the level at which you're allowed to discharge to come into our system. So that then gives them a basis on what do they have to do to pre-treat or clean up their own or reduce their waste before it comes into the system.
Okay. And about how long would it take to do a study?
It doesn't really require a lot to do a study. There's plenty of template ordinances out there. The formulas have already been done industry-wide. The issue would be just come back and do an ordinance to put it into your code.
I think that's all the questions I have for now. Thanks.
They have the surcharge technique.
What Tom says that you have some surcharge, some that's already in your ordinance. We could look at the ordinance and see if it meets all the requirements that are current within.
You have what's called an industrial pretreatment ordinance. We looked at it the same day I was talking with some of y'all, just on my phone just to check to see, and of course you do, because at some point in time, you got a revolving loan, and DEP makes you adopt an industrial pretreatment ordinance, which addresses the very things that Brian has been talking about. Grease traps are usually the simplest, from everything to hexane from the Purina factory, if you had one, that Louisville's ordinance has. They are very cognizant of the kinds of things that your wastewater system has to remain free from, which are the federal free from standards. And the pretreatment ordinance you've got is adequate to design a surcharge, and Brian is correct, it wouldn't take long.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
I wish, if I look back in retrospect, I still remember saying, hey, can we test this thing? Give me 30 days, can we test this thing? We would have better legs to stand on. I appreciate Mr. Cloud's way of bringing this back to us where we can maybe stop the, I don't know what you call it, bleeding or the money coming out of the wallet sort of thing. At least we can sit back and take a look at it. I don't want the leachate coming back, and the way you're stating it to us, it doesn't seem like it will come back, especially if the JED's putting an evaporator in. And I pretty much agree with what everybody said. I don't think any of us up here want any bad water nor anything going into our families, so I totally feel for you. I'm heading more towards sending a letter. I don't want the leachate. Is there some way we can put that in there? That would be fantastic. If it is coming, if they meet the 60 days, which I doubt they'll meet, nor would they wanna, there has to be some stipulations in testing and things that our citizens feel comfortable with putting in the, if they do come back, so that's in there.
I'm sorry.
Councilman Cooper?
That's all right. You got somebody else?
We're through. Anyone else?
The citizens are confused about something.
Do we have any? Well, I certainly concur with most everything we've heard. The last thing we want to do is receive leachate again and have to deal with that issue, especially as with the issues that have been created at the JED landfill with their leachate. And I certainly concur with Mr. Meissner's opinion, and thank you for sharing that. That we've hired a professional. You've been doing this for 40 years. I think it would be very unwise of us not to follow your counsel and end up double paying and then turning around and socking it to the citizens again twice. It just doesn't make sense. I'd like to make a motion that could you just state for me again what your recommendation is that we need to do so that all of us are clear?
Yes, sir. I would send a letter to them invoking the provision of the contract, not open it up for the receipt of leachate, but to say that, to put them on notice of the exceedances of the BOD, COD, and the ammonia, and to give them the period of time in the contract to tell us how they would propose to address that, both in cost and in how they would propose to deal with it, and to make clear to them that the city has no interest in receiving leachate again that is coming from a landfill with coal fly ash in it. And that is what I would propose to put in the letter. Daniel, can you think of anything that I've left out?
No, I don't think so. We would obviously want to track that portion of the contract that it deals with, that would have specific language in it that would address.
In Section 3.
Section 3, yeah.
Well, I'll make a motion that we accept your recommendation and that we proceed with the recommendations that you have just shared. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Councilmember Askew.
Got a question.
Mr. Cooper, ask the question.
You would put that in there, writing to JED landfill that they would have to do a pre-treat? I mean, you're going to put that in black and white writing?
Or just not send it, yeah. Yes, sir. And in fact, we would.
If it's not pre-treated, it can't come to St. Cloud.
Right. And what I would also further propose is to let each one of you look at this letter before it goes out. I really don't have any problem with that.
But you're not giving any credence to let 60 days to let any leachate come?
No, absolutely not.
Nothing in that at all?
No. In fact, make it clear that we're not taking any leachate in the interim, because you're already there. You can't unring that bell, folks, which I think you would take comfort from.
We don't want it.
Unringing the bells, we're not going to start taking leachate again. We want to know how you would propose to address it going forward so that we can bring a conclusion to this contract.
Well, and the only point I'd make on that, and maybe Mr. Cloud can address this, I'm not sure you want to include in that letter specific solutions as to how they might deal with the issue and hold them to that, because then that's just our statement. I don't know, we can think about that if we want to address it, but I think.
I want to know.
Okay.
I know you want to know, but I think we also need to identify the issues, identify the problems, and tell them they have to fix it or pay.
Right.
If you can't do that, in my opinion, I'm not against, I'm against it. I'm not gonna do it. But there again,
Okay.
you're saying you can, and he says they're gonna talk about it.
No.
Well, I think they're going to have to come up with what they want to propose as a solution. And the one thing I'm saying is that if the solution involves us taking leachate where they're getting foreign coal fly ash into that landfill, the answer is going to be no. And that's why I'm saying I think you guys have already rung that particular bell, okay? And I'm pretty sure they understand that, at least based on what their counsel told me today. Okay, because I have had several conversations with him. But as far as how they would propose to deal with it on a going forward basis, they'll give us some explanation for that of how they would foresee doing that. And I think Dan is right that we should not foreclose what they may come up with.
And the reason why is the contract provides an opportunity to cure that is wholly on them. And
Right.
so we shouldn't dictate what the cure is at all in any way, because that may or may not be the right cure. That may be something where they're saying, no, we have an absolute right to cure this. You can't tell us how to cure it. You can only tell us that we have to cure it.
Councilmember Trace.
I just wanted you to restate your motion once we get done with that discussion.
Well, the motion is that we send a letter that brings us back under the protection of our contract, and that you provide the conditions that you stated that about the leachate. Could you clarify that?
Yes, that that we have concerns about the constituents within the leachate, specifically the BOD and the ammonia levels, and that the city has, been under recovering on the costs, and that that is not an acceptable level of constituents of leachate that we can continue to accept, and that we would give them the opportunity to cure that. But in addition to that, I would provide the statement that under no circumstances would the city be taking leachate that was coming from a landfill that has the foreign coal fly ash that they were originally trying to put there.
I think attorneys get paid per word, I swear.
Well, that's why they're attorneys. That's why we're in trouble. Attorneys wrote the contract that we have.
I'm trying to
I know.
be responsive to what I've heard tonight, okay? Which has not been completely consistent.
And that would also include a specific statement then that we're not going to accept leachate until this is resolved.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right.
One way or the other.
Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Councilmember Cooper.
No.
Councilmember Askew.
Aye.
Councilmember Trace.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Matheny.
I'm sorry, I'm not comfortable. No.
Mayor Blackwell.
Aye,
Motion carries 3-2.
thank you. That brings us to our consent agenda.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
we have one more item I think we wanted to move to address.
Oh,
the
yes, I'm
budget.
sorry. I have it here, but I'm overlooked it.
Item number 2 under public hearing.
If there's no objections, we'll deal with public hearing item number 2, resolution number 2020-024R. Madam Clerk, will you read that?
Public hearing for resolution number 2020-024R. A resolution of the City Council of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, amending resolution number 2019-169R, which adopted the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget for the City of St. Cloud, Florida, finding the city manager has certified their prior year fund balances and/or current revenues available in the budget for additional projects and programs in various funds not to include the original budget, requiring the budget to be increased and include the additional said funding in various funds and making supplemental appropriations within the funds.
Good evening, Council. Wendy Colazzo, Finance Director. This is Resolution 2020-024 Romeo, Budget Amendment Number 2. In the slide presentation, you'll get an overview of the net increase or decrease caused by any of the transactions. We have 12 major components that went into the BA number 2. In the general fund to begin, there was a $13,984,000 net dollar increase. Coverage under the general fund was $5,269 for the JAG grant for 4 evidence camera projects for Papa Sierra 2004. Also, $21,000 in additional funding for the Hurricane Dorian cost to recover recovery cost of that. And the EMS grant for medical supplies for project number Papa Sierra 2005. In the St. Cloud OUC interlocal fund, there's a zero net increase. Let me just ask a question because we have the presentation and the memorandum. I'm going to go down the row with the memorandum. Is that okay with everybody?
Sure.
Okay. So we're at the 1% fund. We received insurance proceeds for unit number 12-337 and units number 12-358, which were totaled with an additional contingency of $39,459 to replace those totaled vehicles. In the 1%, we are doing a $537,000 increase there for an engine replacement for Tower Truck 32 for project number Papa Sierra 2006. In the Capital Project Fund, we did the Florida Department of Transportation grant for the design of Phase 2 with an increase of $186,225. In the Water Fund, ice pigging with additional water lines needed to increase the effectiveness and reducing the elimination of discolored water, a total of $600,000 there. Splitting between the Water Fund and the Water Impact Fee Fund, this is just a reclassification of dollars. Originally, they were under Impact Fee Fund for $165,000. We are just reclassifying that to renewal and replacement. In the Stormwater Fund, this is for the pump stations construction for the Blackberry Creek Pond Project, Sierra Whiskey 2004. In the Sewer Impact Fund, Center Lake Ranch, the Reclaimed Water Repump Station Project, Romeo Whiskey 2005 for $400,000. In the General Fund, inclusive between the General Fund and the Building Fund for House Bill 247, we are doing a fire inspection and administrative assistant position add. This is split between the General Fund and the Building Fund. And also a fire plans examiner, which will go 100% to the building department to include vehicle and capital equipment such as laptops for the examiner. Inclusive in this, there's also consultant fees going in for the security review of the building. Between the Water Fund, Sewer Fund, Water impact fees and sewer impact fees, the final component of this budget amendment is installation of water, sewer, and electric conduits, 62,000 of that being to electric, and the total of 324,000 towards the sewer and water conduits that need to be installed for the Nolte Road Commercial Park. I am available for any questions you may have.
Monique Constantino.
I'll pass.
Okay.
What I just read? Ma'am, what I just read is attached in the packet for the agenda. This is just a highlight of the funds. I can go scroll through the rest if you'd like. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to see it.
Just
Sure.
put it up on the overhead.
If you can do it, sure.
Just put your memo up on the overhead. Will that work, Wendy?
You want my memo on the overhead?
Yeah, please.
Sure.
I know what she's asking.
Or just give it to her.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, boy. Small writing.
We'll blow it up.
You write this in Chinese or what?
Given that I'm an eighth of Chinese, may be possible, sir, but no, unfortunately, in accounting and finance, we do deal with a lot of numbers and small spaces, so I apologize for that.
Would anyone else in the audience like to speak to this item? Councilmember Trace?
I'm fine with the $537,000 for the additional aerial, or the replacement of the aerial truck. My only question is, we just need to do a better job of putting this in the capital plan to where it's not a last-minute add. It's in the capital plan, and we're planning for replacement of all these vehicles. So once we go through this, as we massage through the process, I know we've had a lot of changes, but just making sure that we are planning for these appropriately to where it's not $500,000 swings here and there.
Easy.
Councilmember Cooper?
Thank you. Can I ask you a question about the ice picking? You got $600,000. Do you think we're going to use every bit of that? I know you said something about we didn't use all the 500 yet. So you think we're going to make it in time that before they're going to be leaving, in April or May, whenever?
Well, if we do our
Or
job
some-
correctly, yes, sir. So just a reminder that actually 100,000 was because we removed contingency last council meeting and moved it down to 407, which would have covered what this additional cost. The additional 500 is based on calculations of what's remaining in the system. So we should be more than covered. Again, we did have some contingency put in there because, as I stated last council meeting about this issue, is that we never know where a project's going to go and what anomalies we may find. So we feel very confident that this will cover up to that section based on calculations. So if we could keep it at those levels, that would be great, so we don't have to come up again. So we feel confident about that.
Okay, that was my question.
Yes,
Mr. Sturgeon?
Yes, I'd like to address Mr. Trace's concern. We're trying to perfect that system, as we've talked about several times, but I'd like to have the fire chief come up and just address, because this was an unforeseen thing that came up with the ladder truck.
Evening, Mayor, council members, city manager, Joe Sfestris, fire chief. So the issue with this particular apparatus, why it wasn't in our capital plan, is 2 years ago when I came here, we were struggling keeping that truck in service. It was having issues passing its certifications on the ladder and the pump. We were dumping money into it and eventually got to a place where the confidence of that truck to perform, which that is the tool that we rely on to pump water, it wasn't there anymore. And not only did the department not have any trust in it, I didn't have any trust in it, and I didn't feel comfortable with that. So this came about, I wouldn't say in an emergency thing, but right now they're in a backup reserve unit. So that's why it wasn't in the capital plan, is that the truck just there's no confidence in it. And we're about ready to spend, I think we've already spent over $130,000 in just a short time that I've been here. And we're still waiting for quotes to come back to, which are going to be in the tens of thousands, to get it back up and run again. So to me, it was more prudent to go ahead and replace it with a fire truck, and then in the capital improvement plan moving forward, budget to buy a dedicated aerial truck, because aerial trucks are not usually designed to be front run. They're not to go out, you run them into the ground, hence what's happened with this truck. So that's why it's coming to you tonight.
Oh, yeah, I don't have a question of, if you guys have
Okay.
something that's failing, replace it by all means. But I just want to make sure that you guys put the plan in place for us to implement, to give you guys as much equipment as you need to service the community.
Yes, sir, totally understand. Thank you.
And that way, one last question. You do have the information now, since you've been here for the last couple of years, that you can keep up with these fire engines, and
yes, sir.
You'll know, so we can get it timed at the right time to put it on the.
Yes, we do have a plan, a capital plan, and replacing all
Capital
our
plan, that's what I'm
apparatus,
looking
and
for.
same with the rescues, absolutely.
Now
Yep.
that you're the man that knows what's going on.
Oh, Mr. Cooper. Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate it.
No problem.
As long as you keep up with it, I
Yes, sir.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Together.
Thank you, sir.
Can I entertain a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Cooper, second from Councilmember Atheny. Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Askew?
Aye.
Councilmember Trace?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Matheny? Aye. Councilmember Cooper?
Aye.
Mayor Blackwell?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Now, we come to our consent agenda. The next portion of tonight's meeting, consent agenda, which contains items that have been determined to be routine and non-controversial. If anyone in the audience wishes to address a particular item on the consent agenda Now is the opportunity for you to do so. Additionally, if staff or members of the city council wish to speak on a consent item, they will have the same opportunity. Mr. Sturgeon.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I'd like to pull item C
Item C.
for a later date. I'll bring
Okay.
it back to the council.
We'll pull item C if there's no objection.
Could you tell me what that was really? I mean,
That was our irrigation water star requirements, and that's to lower the water usage for irrigation. And we had some calls from different developers. They want to sit down and discuss it, come up with a little bit
So you're
better
just
solution.
pulling completely off?
I'm pulling it off,
Okay,
yes, sir.
that's fine,
And
no
we'll be
problem.
back within 2
Okay.
months.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Councilmember Matheny.
Thank you. I was going to talk about this offline, but since you asked a question on it. You know, we've talked about our water ad nauseum since I've been on council. It's a very complicated issue for sure. But one of the things that I had mentioned, and I'm wondering if we could contemplate it in this revision that you're going to bring back, is changing our land development code to require communities to provide at least a portion of their irrigation water out of their stormwater pond. You know, that
Yeah, we talked
is
about
a lot, I mean, we've talked about it a few times, but if we're gonna talk about utilities and, conservation and the, cause I know it's like we put Bahia in the front, or in the backyard, but they can have St. Augustine in the front yard, you know, things like that. If we're gonna do this, I mean, that is something, it's got a great number of benefits to it. One, it has the local aquifer recharge, it like removes the nutrients from going into the lake. You know, no, it's not in the land development code to,
No, we talked about it. We didn't get it.
to require that in like new development when they design their ponds. So, just if you could contemplate that when you revisiting this.
I'd agree with that.
All right,
You got
we're
the
good,
majority.
we're good.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
We will contemplate that.
Are there any other items that Councilmember Trace?
Item A, I had a question, questions regarding item A.
Okay. Would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, so this is, at any time, staff can request to have, what is it, power lines, I guess, undergrounded?
I have not seen him coming up. And I'll have him answer. If I could answer, this is for new development, required to put those utilities underground.
Okay, because is that the section we're adding at 26.2.1N is only new development, or it's existing development as well?
The intent is for new development, that all new development, that the utilities will go underground. It gives us another tool to help control development.
Yeah, I thought we already required power lines to be put underground.
Hello, Nassim Gandor, Public Works Director. To answer the question in regards to underground utilities for new development, it's has not been codified yet in writing. This is this land development code. This resolution to the land development code will actually put it in put words into writing, so actually have it codified. The section that you're talking about in regards to existing utility facilities located above ground, except where existing public roads, right-of-ways, they shall be removed and placed underground upon request of the Public Works Director or designee that allows options. So where you have utilities are in conflict with public works capital improvement programs, for instance, would be give the put in codify in writing in ours to be able to dictate certain utilities to be relocated / put underground on that. Again, it's following a language that is already in place by policy. For example, if there is a public works project and there's utilities in conflict, we can ask the utilities company to relocate that type of utility. Like I said, this puts words policy into writing policy.
Okay, because the way I read it is if we ask, they have to, like the massive power lines down Neptune Road or Canoe Creek, they'd have to underground those if we request.
If we request it, yes. And then, of course, when it comes to, I'm sure, would the follow-on be about payment?
Would the what?
Well,
Would the follow-on question be about payment?
Well, hang on. So the way the language reads, and proposed, wherever existing utility facilities are located above ground, except where existing on public roads and rights-of-way, they shall be removed and placed underground upon request of the Public Works Director as designated. So, to the extent that those lines are, that you mentioned, are on a public right-of-way or on a public road, they would not, the Public Works Director would not have the ability to require those to be.
But there are some rather large ones too that go through easements that.
Possibly, yes.
Okay, I just didn't know if it makes sense to put a KVA value of, because there are some of those big three-phase lines, it's liquid-cooled lines. I mean, it's almost more a hazard for it to be underground than above ground, because you get any utility contractor hitting it and not a pretty sight.
Can you read that section again?
Sure.
Sorry.
Whenever existing utility facilities are located above ground, except where existing on public roads and rights-of-way, they shall be removed and placed underground upon request by the Public Works Director or his designee.
Okay, so that changes my interpretation of the way this is written. So it's, when you're saying that, you're saying the Public Works Director or designee could go into any development that's existing today in the city and say, put your utilities underground? Is that the way that reads?
Yes, ma'am.
Because then, if you're the neighborhood, right? Like you go into the HOA and you say, put your utilities underground. Not that you would say it like that. You would say, please.
At the very least, yes, ma'am.
Not really.
Anyways, then they're gonna say, okay, we don't have $1.5 million to put our utilities underground. So I'm just,
But then we give them a waiver, and then someone else says, well, you gave them the waiver.
right, I was thinking it was new development more. I thought it was new. Could we maybe like pull
Revise
that
it.
and revisit it?
Yes, we'll do that.
We could do that.
I'll pull that for revision. I
Yeah.
don't think that was the intent.
I had
Thank
asked,
you, Mr. Creed.
I had asked Mr. Wheeler about the question about that, and he said that like over in Kissimmee, they've been doing that for years, right?
Yeah, I thought we were requiring.
And just to put a follow on this, this language, actually, we discussed it with the city of Kissimmee on how they handle KUA. And after discussion with that, they provided their verbiage. And we actually, and then just to be, trying to be good neighbors, just like we would do with Osceola County, we're trying to kind of help standardize things across the board. So we followed Kissimmee's language as well.
Follow the same thing.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
I'm just wondering who's expected to pay for it is.
Where's the money coming from?
So in briefing, if you recall, I think I talked to the majority of you at the OUC interlocal meeting. OUC said they're not paying for it, and I said, we're not paying for it, so it would be on the developer.
So you're going to pull this?
Yes, I am
And
pulling it for
readdress this issue?
revision with the direction of the council.
Any other issues, council? David Meissner?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, David Meisner, 3410 Polly's Loop North, St. Cloud, Florida. I have a question on two of the consent items. Number I is on the police officers being requested under federal funding. The question I have, what about the equipment? Is that going to be out of impact fees, or is that going to be coming out of the general budget?
Okay.
You want to ask?
Thank you, Mr. Meisner. Pete Gauntlet, Chief of Police. If so approved, any of the capital items, cars, equipment, would be coming out of our law enforcement impact fees and not out of the general budget at all. So we're hopeful. This is quite a competitive process, but if we're so lucky to obtain this grant and approved by council, we would save approximately $2 million in doing so. So we're anxious to see how we do.
Pete, last question. Excuse me, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You're estimating 3 to 4 police officers, not 10, right? Or do you think we'll get 10?
We've asked for 10. We can certainly justify it. And I want to thank the procurement section, the division, for their work with their grant staff to helping us with this project. This is a very competitive grant. We were successful a number of years ago in hiring 5 military veterans onto the agency. This grant focuses in twofolds. One is on violent crime increases, which we have had in the city this year, and the other one is in school safety. As most of you know, all of our school resource officers, we've had to systematically pull from the roads of the city of St. Cloud to place into the schools for school security based on the unfunded mandates from the state of Florida. And what we're asking is to take those positions that we've lost to the school, put them back on the roads and in future locations with all our expansions, particularly south and east, and have a lot more presence and coverage into those areas. This is a remarkable grant in that normally the federal government does not provide this much funding on the front end. They're providing 75% of the salaries of each one of these positions for 3 solid years, to the point where that's nearly $2 million. The city's piece of that is only 25 years. And yes, in the 4th year, the city would be required to pick up the full freight, but the savings is remarkable. This is a $400 million federal grant. There's going to be hundreds of law enforcement agencies around the country. But I think with our work with our lobbyists, and certainly I'm going to be trying to work it on the back channels as much as I can to see if we can pull this off. And if we're so approved, we'll know something midsummer, and we'll be coming back to council with an announcement and a request for consideration, and then we'll take a look at it at this point. So to answer your question, Mr. Cooper, we could get 2, we could get 4, we could get 6, or maybe we could get 10.
We'll take them all.
Yes, sir.
I get you. As long as you can provide all the subservice that we can.
And we'll be looking at it and creating long-term operational plans and some other things to be able to offset and working with finance.
But if we took 10, you've got enough police cars and all the equipment that we
We'll,
can handle.
in the impact fee, yes, sir, we do have enough to cover,
enough
so
to cover.
we won't be touching the general budget.
Okay.
And Chief, do you want us to add direction that we have the city manager reach out to the lobbyists to push this as well?
We have, and then I met with the director of Darren Soto's office, Congressman Darren Soto's office yesterday also.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
They're on it.
Thanks.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Skippy, dude.
And I met with our lobbyists in Washington, and they're going to help pursue it.
Mr. Mayor, one of the other agenda items I have is on J. It's on the pigging amendment number 2.
Yes, sir.
And I was discussed previously about having the amendments, and there's going to be 3 more amendments or 2 more amendments besides this. My concern was the failure of the system, which you're now having problems having a contractor being able to complete the contract. Why wasn't this done during the RFQ or identified earlier and money allocated so you could have had enough money to finish this project instead of worrying about having filters installed on homes if they can't do it? Thank you.
Mr. Wheeler, would you like to speak?
I can answer that,
Oh,
Mayor.
Mr.
First off, we did the initial allocation of money. We thought that would be enough to address the project in the areas that were covered with the resin. So we went back, and as they came in here and started, pigging the area, we found out there's a larger area than what we thought. So that's why we're coming back. We want to make sure we have another allocation to make sure we can complete the job. So it is on the fly, so we had to do that.
And we've included direction to write a letter.
Yes, I'm clear on that. Yes, we will get a letter from the council, from Rep. LaRosa and Congressman Soto.
Perfect.
Thank you.
But our desire, we'll certainly do whatever it takes to hopefully finish the project. Would anyone else like to speak to the consent agenda? Mrs. Crumpler.
Hewitt Crumpler, Michigan Avenue, St. Cloud, Florida. I'll go through my questions very quickly, and hopefully the city manager and the attorney can jot them down so we can get through this quickly. Let's see. On item B, I just want to understand what is changing here from what to what.
Did you say Bravo, ma'am? B as in boy?
I can't talk that military talk like
I'm
Wendy
sorry,
does,
was it
but
B as
yes,
in boy?
yes, B as in
Okay.
boy.
All right, sorry.
Confuses me when she does that. I keep looking for whiskey. I don't know what she's talking about. But anyway, yes, B. What's changing? What's the name? Is it just the name of the policy? That's what it seemed like. I'm not sure. On number C, we pulled that. Never mind.
It's been pulled.
I got it. I said that. I'm excited about the garage sale. My question is that when people have garage sales at their houses, or there's one big location for it for the city?
Their houses.
Their houses. Okay, that's nice. Number E is are we purchasing more recycling cans? Is that what that is, item number E? And if so, is that cost covered by impact fees? That's a question. Number F, what's the cost of Phase 1 and cost of Phase 2 for the Blackberry Creek item that's on number F? We pulled G, right?
No.
No? No? Oh, sorry, G. Oh, yeah, my question on G is just the usual. Is there any real property land on that list?
No.
Thank you. H, the public utility easement. What is WWRH Osceola 3 LLC? What is that? I don't know what that is.
That's the landowner.
That's the owner? And what is Green Solutions Commercial Development?
It's the name of their development.
And what is being built here? Is this housing or what is this?
It's along 192. There's a commercial facility that was built over by the sheriff's department.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Thank you. And I'm excited about item I in getting the new police officers. I hope we can get 10. And what it points out to me is what a great job the grant people are doing and our police department's doing getting that. I hope we can get all those officers, and I sure hope we can get some progress on where to put these people, because we're out of space and we need a public safety complex, and it needs to be a high priority in my mind. Let's see here. J, what's the, how much of this project is done? We talked about water a lot tonight, so I won't retrace that. But my real question is, once the ice pigging is done for the designated area that you guys talked about, are there other water issues in the city that have been identified? And if so, what are they? And what's the plan for that, besides the ice pigging? And then item K was, I've only got a few more. Item K, was it put out for bid? Item L, the contract extension for the Flowers Chemical Labs. Is this just ongoing water testing? What is this for? And item M, was it put out to bid? Item N, why are we terminating that contract with the, what do you call that?
That
Huh?
was for the hurricane.
Yeah, the hurricane people. Why are we terminating that
Because they
contract?
failed to meet the deadlines for FEMA for non-performance, but we went back to the company we were using previously that finished second in the bidding process.
Oh, so they didn't do their job?
That's correct.
So we know how to terminate a contract. Wow. We terminated that contract for non-performance, and we've got another person to do it, or a firm to do it. Is there any recourse for us for that? I mean, the fact that they didn't do their job, did we lose money?
They don't get paid for any more work.
Did we lose money because they didn't do their job?
I don't think we've paid them anything yet. I'd have to double check.
Well, if they were supposed to recover money for us, the money didn't get recovered?
No. That's correct. But the new company will get the money for us.
We'll get it. Okay, perfect. And then on number O, the new pier, okay, that's the pumping. Is that pumping truck the same as the ladder truck?
No, ma'am.
That's what I thought. So that's just the pumping truck. The ladder truck is to come? Is that correct?
The ladder truck it's a pumper, but it has a ladder on it also.
But it's,
Not to be
okay.
facetious, but yes.
Yeah, okay, great. So those are my quick questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, item B is a change the procurement policy designating the procurement department instead of the purchasing department. We also added some language of federal requirements as we take federal grants, so we had to put federal language in the policy.
E,
Those are
Recycling
roll-off dumpsters that we need to purchase for additional needs for growth, and then the ones we've been using, we can't weld them anymore to repair them, so we're getting some new ones.
I think
Oh, those are the big solid metal ones?
And these aren't recycled. That's correct. These are the big roll-off dumpsters.
Okay.
Item F, Phase 1, that's the design phase, the Blackberry Creek area, and Phase 2 will submit to the state for a grant once we have the planning part done, so we don't know what that cost is going to be yet.
There's no max amount.
Not yet, no. I mean, we don't know till the planning's done, and we say, okay, now we can go back to the state and say we need to purchase the pump now.
Okay.
I think the next one was H. Oh, yeah, we answered that one.
J was the one about the water up beyond the ice pigging projects. Are there other water areas that have issues, and what's the plan for that? Do we have any?
We've identified the areas where we need to do the ice pigging, and if we can get Suez to stay until that's cleaned up.
But once that's done, Mr. Sturgeon, that means we've fixed all of our
Well,
water problems?
Again, we'll evaluate the system at the end once we do that, and there are experts, and they'll tell us they think the system's clean.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Crumpler.
Well, I just wondered if he was answering any more questions.
I will. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to get my thoughts together before I answer.
Thank you.
Item K is specialty labs. It's used for compliance testing that Flowers Chemical does for our compliance permit for our water and wastewater and reclaimed water. Insert N and O. Yep, I think we're good.
Would anyone else want to speak to the consent agenda? Do you have discussion or motion by council?
So moved.
Motion to approve the consent agenda, less items A and less items C.
Second.
C.
Thought I made a motion, but I'm sorry.
Well, Mr. Trace made a motion with the provision of that he added, and Ms. Matheny made a second.
Yep.
Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Trace,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Matheny,
Aye.
Councilmember Cooper,
Aye.
Councilmember Askew,
Aye.
Mayor Blackwell,
Aye.
motion carries 5-0.
That brings us to public hearings.
Number 1.
Item number 1.
First reading and introduction for ordinance number 2020-10, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, amending Chapter 36 Solid Waste of the City of St. Cloud City Code, deleting Article 3, Landfill, Section 36-71, 36-72, and 36-73, and creating a new Article 3, Solid Waste Impact Fee, Section 36-71. Fee imposition, Section 36-72, adoption of technical report as basis of impact fees, Section 36-73, definitions, Section 36-74, determination of fee, Section 36-75, collection of solid waste impact, Section 36-76, solid waste impact fee schedule, Section 36-77, use of funds collected, Section 36-78, exemptions, Section 36-79, interpretation of articles and fee schedules, Section 36-80, effective regulations and requirements, Section 36-81, alternative calculation of solid waste impact fees, and Section 36-81, alternative calculations of solid waste impact fees, Section 36-82, appeals providing for severability, conflicts codification, and effective date.
Good evening. There is a lot of tables,
Please state
numbers.
your name.
Oh, sorry, Jim Wally, Innovative Waste Consulting Services. There are a lot of tables and numbers and data in this presentation. I'm going to skip over a good bit of it, but it's there. If there's any questions, we can go back and revisit it. As a brief outline of what I want to talk about, introduction of the study, the objectives of the study, the different cost areas that it's covered, and then summary and recommendation. So this work has grown out of recommendations for the rate study that was conducted last year to set the solid waste rates. One of the conclusions and one of the items of interest for the council was to include the implementation of an impact fee. The point of an impact fee is to take some of the cost for growth, and rather than having the citizens pay it, the people that are already residents pay it, to assign some of that cost to new residents that are a result of that growth. You can see here in this table the number of current customers for residential bin, commercial bin, and commercial dumpster customers for the city's solid waste collection program. And so that's the citizens that are getting the current level of service. The impact fee provides for people to continue, the new residents to have the same level of service as the current residents. And so again, as the city grows, there's capital needs. And the list down there, the three items at the bottom of this slide are the main capital needs: the transfer station capacity, collection containers, and collection and transfer vehicles. That's what's covered by this fee. Again, I'm going to move a little fast through some of these calculation slides. So the first item that's covered by the impact fee is the utilization of the transfer station. Basically, there's excess capacity in the transfer station, and a impact fee can be used to cover some of that impact so that new residents can buy into that existing capacity. Right now, the transfer station is utilized about 27% by city residents, and the assumption is that that'll continue to be the case going forward. And again, a lot of details on how this is calculated, but essentially, based on the number of residents required to reach full capacity at that 27% rate, this is the per unit cost for bin customers and commercial customers to buy into the existing capacity of the transfer station. The next cost item is collection containers. So right now, the solid waste operating budget covers the cost of new collection containers. An impact fee could potentially cover those costs. These are the costs of the different collection containers for the different types of customers the city has. Residential customers, they get the MSW, recycling, and yard waste bins. They have 3 bins. You can see the total cost on the right for those customers. Commercial customers don't have the yard waste bin. Dumpster customers, on average, the dumpsters required for the typical commercial dumpster customer come out to almost $1,000. So that would be the cost to provide dumpsters on average for new commercial dumpster customers. The final big cost item is collection and transfer vehicles. So the capacity required for collection and transfer vehicles for new residents can be covered by an impact fee. These are essentially allocated based on the number of customers served. Again, as I said earlier, we need to be able to, for impact fees to work, they have to provide the same level of service that current customers have. So these are allocated based on the number of customers served by the current collection vehicles. Moving through these very quickly, these are collection trucks currently used by the city, and the on average number of customers served by each vehicle and the type of customers served. So again, allocated based on a level of current service. We divide the number of vehicles into the number of customers served to figure out ultimately how many customers can be served by a vehicle. Transfer trucks are a little bit more complicated. I don't want to get too far in the weeds unless there are questions about this, but basically because non-city residents also use the transfer station and use these transfer vehicles, we can only cover the fraction utilized by city residents in an impact fee. So this table shows how we calculated that. When you break it all down, basically you have a number of customers that can be served by each type of vehicle. You have the estimated cost of the vehicle. That's how we get the cost per customer for each type of vehicle to cover the collection program and the transfer station. One note about roll-off trucks I'll address a little bit later. In a future version of an impact fee, the city may consider including that. At the time, we don't have enough data on roll-off trucks and how they're utilized to include those, but that data is being collected by the city staff now. So summary, historically, capital expenditures has been highly variable. That was part of the conclusion of the rate study, is that impact fees might help to stabilize the capital expenditures. And this will help the city to normalize that budget year to year. And they will allow the allocation of the cost of growth, not to current residents, but to new residents, so that the new residents are paying for the things that new residents need to be covered by the solid waste collection program. 2 limitations, as I mentioned before, the data on roll-off trucks was not detailed enough for us to include it at this time, but the city is collecting data on that for future versions. And administrative costs may be included in impact fees as well. At this time, we couldn't estimate what that would be, but after it's implemented, the city will know what that costs and can include that cost in a future version. These are the bottom line numbers for different types of customers and for different cost categories. The collection containers, transfer station capacity, and then the collection and transfer vehicles. And again, administrative cost is not included. So that cost down there is the bottom line. This is our contact information. And let me know if you guys have any additional questions. I have a lot more details I can discuss if necessary. Thank you.
First of all, would anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? State your name and address.
Hewitt Crumpler, Michigan Avenue, St. Cloud, Florida. Very hard to follow that very fast, but a couple questions. These are only impact fees for new things, right? This does not affect any current customer, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, that's good. And then there was a comment in that quick presentation about non-residents using the facilities, and I'm presuming that's people like Kissimmee? Is that, what would that be, non-residents using the facility?
Talking about the transfer station where haulers,
Yeah.
private haulers and municipal haulers bring their solid waste to the transfer.
Right, and I think in the previous meeting, we learned that the folks from Kissimmee were giving quite a discount, okay, on that. Am I correct in that?
But we're working to renegotiate those
Yes,
agreements
they
right
were.
now.
Oh, you are? Okay. Well, that was my concern, is making sure that since we can only charge fees by what we're using, okay, and not on non-residents, right? Then we need to make sure that we're maximizing it for our use and we're not diluting any potential income because of non-residential users that are getting a big discount. They should pay for their fair share for certain. Thank you.
Would anyone else care to speak? Not, we'll have discussion or motion by council. Councilmember Matheny.
Thank you. I wanted to thank the city manager and staff for getting this together. This was something that I brought up and said, can't we do impact fees for garbage? Because in one of our previous meetings, a previous public works director had made a comment that we would have to buy a special truck to accommodate this development, which wasn't true. It turns out, like, I guess she briefed us wrong or whatever. But that started my wheels turning, and I'm like, well, that's not really fair. Like, why should we have to, like, pay for a new truck, and why should we have to do these things? Can't we do an impact fee for solid waste? So thank you so much for getting this put together. I really appreciate it. I'm in support of it. I think, you know, anything we can do to have development pay for itself is a good thing.
Absolutely.
Is that a motion?
Do I have any other discussion?
I'll make a motion, but I didn't know if anybody else had.
Go ahead.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Matheny, second from Councilmember Cooper. Madam Clerk?
Deputy Mayor Matheny?
Aye.
Councilmember Cooper?
Aye.
Councilmember Askew?
Aye.
Councilmember Trace?
Aye.
Mayor Blackwell?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
We've already dealt with item number 2, which brings us to council action. Madam Clerk, will you please read item number 1?
Resolution number 2020-019R, a resolution of the City Council of City of St. Cloud, Florida, determining the lowest responsible bidder whose bid is reasonable and otherwise in the best interest of the City of St. Cloud, and award thereof in regards to invitation to bid number 2019-071 to Cathcart Construction Company, Florida LLC, whose subject matter is Nolte Road Commercial Park Utility Improvements, establishing a contingency, authorizing the city manager to approve change orders without increasing the approved budget, and providing an effective date.
Good evening, Council. I'm Leslie Flores, Procurement Services Director. The item before you is Resolution Number 2020-019R. This is to award invitation to bid number 2019-071, Nolte Road Commercial Park Utility Improvements, to Cathcart Construction Company, Florida LLC. This project includes the installation of the water main utility, reclaim main utility, electrical conduits per OUC requirements, and the final grade. The total project cost is $453,233, which includes the base bid amount of $412,030 plus a 10% contingency of $41,203. Staff's recommendation is to award ITB number 2019-071 to Cathcart Construction Company, Florida LLC, and request City Council's approval of this resolution, 2020-019R.
Thank you. Would anyone in the audience like to speak to this item? Do I have discussion or motion by council?
Quick question.
Councilman Cooper.
Excuse me. Do we have any other bids that were very close that came in back of that one?
We have 6 bids that we received. The apparent low bidder was High Standard Construction. They were found to be non-responsive. So Cathcart Construction was the next apparent low bidder.
Okay. All right, thank you, ma'am.
Hi, you're welcome.
Well, I move the adoption of resolution 2020-19R. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilman Askew. Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Cooper?
Aye.
Councilmember Askew?
Aye.
Councilmember Trace?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Matheny?
Aye.
Mayor Blackwell?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Item number 2.
Resolution number 2020-035R, a resolution of the City Council of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, approving a water and wastewater service agreement for Mid-Florida Acres LLC residential development named Narcoossee Reserve, located in the unincorporated areas of Osceola County on the east side of Narcoossee Road, west of Zuni Road, north of Tonsom Drive, and south of Lake Hidden Cove, authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement and providing an effective date.
This is your standard water and sewer agreement that you have for development, and so there's nothing unusual. It's your standard.
Could you just state your name for the record, please?
I think I'm Brian Wheeler, interim utilities director. So.
Who? We know that.
So I think you're representing the. Well,
Is the applicant here?
Yeah, good evening. My name is Rob Watson. I'm with Hanson Water and Associates, and I'm just here to answer any questions that you may have.
Make it hard on you.
It's pretty standard. Yeah, it's been interesting.
You're not making it hard on you.
Would anyone in the audience like to speak to this item? Do we have discussion, a motion by council?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Cooper, second by Councilmember Matheny. Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Askew?
Aye.
Councilmember Trace?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Matheny?
Aye.
Councilmember Cooper?
Aye.
Mayor Blackwell?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Do we want to talk about leach it again?
Sure, bring it up again.
Mr. Manzares?
Just to remind the council, we have a dependent special district meeting next week, which is on your information section, obviously, but you should have been provided today as copies of a matrix that was put together by the listing broker for the Stevens Plantation North property, including LOIs related to the most recent offers on that. So it's our intent to have back for you a proposed agreement for consideration at your meeting next week. But I want to make sure you were aware of it so that you could look at those items beforehand. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Sturgeon?
Thank you, Mayor. I have 7 items. No, I'm kidding. I have nothing. Thank you.
Did you need them?
Wait a second.
I think the clerk has something.
Madam Clerk?
I just wanted to note on the agenda, the times are wrong for the DST meeting. That should be at 5:30.
5:30.
And the workshop is immediately following, 6 p.m. or immediately following.
Okay, so the agenda they distributed at 6 p.m. on it, so we have to amend.
We corrected that.
All right,
You'll
thank
see that it was withdrawn and then pulled back and then sent back out.
Could you just state that again, please? The DSD?
The DSD is at 5:30.
5:30.
And then the workshop is 6 o'clock or immediately following.
Thank you. Mr. Sturgeon?
I have nothing, Mayor.
Okay. Councilmember Askew?
I have nothing, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember Trace?
I'm good, thank you.
Councilmember Matheny?
I just have one thing, sorry. So I have been talking with the city manager in OUC for quite some time about the power poles along 10th Street and the clutter of power poles along 10th Street. The last update that I received from OUC was that, yeah, they're trying to get the wooden poles down, but that there is cable and phone on the old poles. And so I asked Mr. Manzares and the city manager, it's in our right-of-way, can't we demand
Just knock them down.
that the utilities are moved? And so they were going to bring it up at the OUC meeting, so if you could provide an update, because I haven't heard.
They told me they were going to get them down. They didn't give me a timeline.
Well,
so.
I need a timeline, because
Okay.
they've been saying this for like 3 years, at least,
So-
like I've been.
It's time.
I will pin them down tomorrow.
And my question was, when you went, was, is there something that we can do as a city to get that to happen, you know? I mean, it's our right-of-way, they're in the right-of-way by permit, I assume, they're not by easement, so there should be something that we can do to motivate people to
You don't
get
come
their
to
lines off. Like, we're taking the poles down on this date,
You're
so.
gonna knock it down.
Well,
I don't want you to opine on it, but if you could just.
I just remind you that those
Those are
technically
our
the
poles.
city poles.
There are poles, and they're in our right-of-way. That's what I'm saying. My patience is up with waiting for the utilities to move, so.
We,
I don't know if the other council members feel the same.
Same thing.
What's the rights of removing poles that have cable and stuff
If
on
they're
it?
in our right-of-way and they're not in there by easement, we can tell them.
Or one of the questions that came up during the meeting we had last Friday was that we had to investigate whether they actually had pole attachment agreements to those poles and they were, and they're obviously been there a long time, and so that would complicate the issue if they did have that, because we'd have to remove them in accordance with those agreements if there are any.
So, yeah, so I would like us to
Can you find out on that?
put the foot on the accelerator and get the poles down.
Dan, that's your problem then.
Everybody, do I have three?
I gladly accept it.
Okay,
I gladly
awesome.
accept it. I would suggest you that, there's one quick way to do it, and that's the city council could just, they are in the right of way, and they could authorize them to be removed and the lines relocated, but it would have to be at the initial cost of the city.
Well, I would like us to see what we can do to get them to move their lines. I mean, it's been 3 years I've been asking about it. I've gone through like 3 different sets of staff at OUC, so.
We have a meeting with OUC next week and their general counsel, so we'll again bring it up.
That would be great. And we got a culinary bike tour on Saturday, if you haven't signed up. Pretty excited. Eating and riding bicycles,
Oh,
it sounds
I like eating.
fantastic, so.
I like eating.
I'll be there.
And some drinking, maybe?
I can show off my bicycling skills. That's
At
it.
the same time?
Yeah.
Councilmember Cooper.
How long can I have? Mr. Sturgeon, can you tell me about the music on New York Avenue? Let's get the, every time I see you,
No,
I
sir.
want to ask you the question.
I have no update on that.
What are we doing? How do we get an update?
We are trying to get the right equipment bid put out from
Don't we
procurement.
have somebody that can, internet, like the ice picking, and we can find out about getting some music downtown?
Yeah, like I
come on,
said,
this is-
I understand your concern.
Lynette and myself, we asked 6
I was
months.
lights. I was the light
Chuck's
fanatic.
music,
I know,
I mean, sorry, Mr. Cooper's
I was
music.
the light fanatic.
So,
I'm still on it.
do we have an update on that, where we're at? Leslie?
Somebody
There we
help me
go.
here.
Sorry, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you. No, thank
No,
you. I appreciate you helping here.
Good evening, Leslie Flores, Procurement Services Director. We're working on the scope of work right now. We just got, I believe, our final piece of the puzzle, where we have the radio frequencies for the meters. I needed to get the information on those frequencies so that whoever develops the design for the equipment, so that it doesn't interfere with those frequencies. So I just got that information today. So then, once we have the scope of work, we should have it out in the next week or two.
Go ahead.
It's not related to this, I just need to go back. Were you
Go
done?
back. I'll let you go back.
Also, I wanted to say that there is a fundraiser at Avatar Car Wash on Sunday. I believe the hours are 9 to 3. Is it 9 to 3? It's to raise money for the victims of the 2 house fires. So they're gonna have like bounce houses, hot dogs and hamburgers. I think there's gonna be raffle items. I understand police and fire will be drying your cars. Batman will be there. So definitely make sure you go by. 50% of the car wash is going to go towards the fund. So that's a great thing. That's on Sunday.
Last question. Mr. Surgeon, can you tell me about where we at on Pennsylvania putting out the bid? It's getting.
Oh, for the phase two?
March, March is here?
Yes, sir. So I think last council meeting, I updated you that we're going to be at 30% plans by the end of the month. We won't be at 90% plans until October. And then we need to work.
When?
October. Yeah, I said that last meeting. So we need to work with the downtown vendors about tearing up the street during their productive time of the year. And so we're going to work with them. So it's probably going to be by the time we get through the holidays, go out to bid first of the next year, and then start construction in April, May.
This whole thing started January and February, and then it
Correct.
went to March, and then.
So
now it's-
we accepted state money, and they put a lot of hoops we had to jump through, the Department of Transportation,
I
who's
think
been
we had
fan-
money to start, though, we could have done that.
who's been fantastic to work with, but, well, again, when you accept state money, you can't supplant, there's a lot of requirements, and they've been fantastic to work with, it's just it's a bureaucratic entity, just like we are. So,
Like you all, huh?
yeah, I've tried to cut a lot of the red tape, but
So this is gonna be end of this year before you, man.
and again, because we're gonna be right into the holidays by the time we're at 90% plans.
Okay, that's it. Let you go now.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Last week, I was in Washington as a member of the OUC St. Cloud Board, meeting with the American Public Power Association. It was a very informative trip. We had the opportunity to meet with different congressmen from our state as well as our senators. Two of the items out of the number of things that were discussed, they were making appeals to our elected officials to please help us with getting the funding that we should be receiving from FEMA. It was amazing the huge amounts of money, millions and millions of dollars, that has still not been paid out for the storm recovery efforts that were exercised, especially by the power utilities in the cities. And that's one of the issues that they were making appeal to please free that money up. Another item I thought was very interesting when it came to power was the FCC is wanting to allow greater access and auction off space on the 6 gigahertz bandwidth, which greatly impacts our first responders who use that bandwidth, and they were making their appeal to please not allow that to happen. I also had the privilege of meeting with our federal lobbyists. We asked them to continue to make a priority this grant that we're requesting for additional police officers. We also asked that if they could find any pockets of money for helping to fund a public safety complex that we definitely need for our city. They said they would certainly see if they could find any money for that. And we also talked to them about, again, working with Congressman Soto to help get our water tested and to also helpfully find some funding for the money that we've been spending to try and clear all that up, as well as making appeal to the company that was doing our pigging to continue on. I thought it was a very profitable trip. At this time, we come to our information section and report section. Thursday, March the 5th, 2020, Stevens Plantation Independent Special District Meeting at 5:30 here at City Hall Council Chambers, Thursday, March the 5th. There'll be a City Council workshop following that at 6 p.m. Friday and Saturday, September 6th and 7th, the Institute for Elected Municipal Officials is in Altamont Springs. Thursday, March the 12th, there will be our next City Council meeting at 6:30 here in Council Chambers. I'd like to make you aware that warrant list number 7 is available for your review, as well as the Tree Advisory Committee meeting minutes from December 2019, which was approved. With that, we have no other items. This meeting is adjourned.
We talked to her about it.
Public safety workshop Thursday.